Almighty God, we, the representatives of the citizens of the City of Brisbane, are assembled here to strive and care for the welfare of our city and all its people. Lord, we ask you to guide us in our decisions we make here today. Amen. Brisbane City Council acknowledges this country and its traditional custodians. We acknowledge and respect the spiritual relationship between traditional custodians and this country, which has inspired language, songs, dance, law and dreaming stories for many thousands of years. We pay our respects to elders, those who have passed into the dreaming, those here today and those of tomorrow. May we continue to peacefully walk together in gratitude, respect and kindness in caring for this country and one another. Please be seated. I declare the meeting open. And may I remind all councillors of your obligations to declare prescribed and declarable conflicts of interest where relevant, and requirement of such to remove yourself from the council chamber for debate and voting where applicable. Are there any apologies?
Mr Chair, I advise that Councillor Atwood and Councillor Landers will be absent today, and I move that they be granted a leave of absence from the meeting.
Seconded.
It has been moved by Councillor Hutton and seconded by Councillor Mackay that Councillors Atwood and Landers be granted a leave of absence for today's meeting. All those in favour say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those against say no. The ayes have it. Lord Mayor, we have a motion of condolence on the agenda.
I move that this council extend its sincerest and deepest sympathies to the family and friends of the late James Wilding and pay tribute to him for his dedicated service to the city and the people of Brisbane.
Seconded.
It has been moved by the Lord Mayor and seconded by Councillor Cassidy that this council extend its sincerest and deepest sympathies to the families and friends of the late James Wilding and pay tribute to him for his dedication and service to the city and the people of Brisbane. Are there any further speakers? Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Today we take a moment to pay tribute to former councillor, or alderman as he was known when he was first elected, James Wilding, better known as Jim Wilding. We received notification yesterday that Jim passed away on Sunday morning, aged 87 years of age. He had retired to northern New South Wales with his wife, Jan. Jim was a Liberal alderman in this place, serving as the alderman for McDowell from 1990 to the year 2000. He was first elected in a by-election and went on to contest and win 3 more elections until his retirement in 2000. Jim was an authentic person as you could get. He was larger than life, louder than life, and famously never needed a microphone to speak. Deputy Mayor. He could command a room by standing, and this was part of his authenticity as a politician. Jim was a big fan of political theatre, but also a Liberal to his bootstraps. Some councillors here might remember that in every budget delivered by Lord Mayor Jim Sawley, Jim would always use the same comeback. The cold grey mantle of socialism, he would say, and he delivered the line like clockwork every single year for 10 years. But his politics were softened when he also on budget day delivered a red rose to every female councillor, both administration and opposition, at the budget meeting for 10 years that he was in council. Jim served on multiple committees while in council, including transport, development and planning, planning and growth management, customer services and city business. In addition to his council roles, he also had an external appointment on the Local Government Association between 1997 and 2000. Outside the chamber, Jim was a big community advocate. He worked hard in his 10 years and put the community at the forefront of his job. He had strong connections with every community group in his ward, none more so than the Stafford Rotary Club. As an alderman, he organised a debating competition between the Stafford Rotary Club and the Bunya Lions, which became an annual event both clubs look forward to. With the debating competition happening here in the chamber and also at the Maritime Museum on one occasion as well. It was through his engagement with local community groups that he made lifelong friends too. Separate to this, Jim was responsible for major upgrades right across his local community. One that he was particularly passionate about was a drainage upgrade around the Queen of Apostles Primary School along Appleby Road in Stafford. On behalf of my entire team, I want to extend our thoughts and prayers to Jim Wilding's family and friends. Thank you, Mr Chair.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Further speakers? Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks, Chair. I rise today on behalf of Labor councillors here in City Hall to extend our sincere condolences on the loss of former councillor and former alderman James Wilding. Jim Wilding served as the councillor for the McDowell ward, as we've heard, from 1990 to 2000, a time of great and positive change here in Brisbane. A park in Bridge and Downs has been named the Jim Wilding Reserve as a nod to his service to that local community and his lasting legacy. Regardless of politics, serving your community in your career comes with a lot of sacrifices as a councillor, and I admire Jim's dedication throughout his decade-long service here in City Hall. On behalf of our team, I would like to extend our condolences to Jim's family, friends and colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Wines.
Thanks, Mr Chair. Look, I just want to speak very quickly in memory of Jim Wilding. A lot of what you've heard earlier is true. Jim was a very large man who had a very large voice and a very large presence and always wore great big gold rings. For those people who didn't meet him, imagine the opposite of Norm Wyndham, right? It's the easiest way to imagine what these two gentlemen were like. Jim Wilding was a really, it's probably an unfair criticism of Norm when I start talking like this, but Jim was a very engaging and large individual in every sense, and he was always proud of his contributions that both through what I would call an unusual behaviour of offering flowers to all the ladies every budget session, something he would remind people of well into his retirement, but also that he would always stand up for freedom, and he would always fight the cold grey mantle of socialism. That was something that whenever you would meet him, he would personally remind you of. I remember a story, because he served with two different Lord Mayors. He served with, of course, Lord Mayor Sally Ann Atkinson and Lord Mayor Jim Sawley. He tells a story that the first meeting he ever attended, the first party room meeting, I should say, he was there and he thought, hey, this is pretty good. This is his retelling of the story. This is pretty good, you know. Mate, that's Sally Ann. The team's here. Okay, good. We're in, you know, a councillor. And then they're going through the the council papers of the day, and in it was the naming of John Goss Reserve. And Sally Ann's like, who did this? And pointed at Jim Wilding. He's like, did you do this, Jim? Is this the first thing you're going to do as a councillor? That's no good. And he's like, and there's Jim in the corner, oh God, what's Sally Ann yelling at me for already on my first meeting? But John Goss Reserve is there, Jim Wilding Park is there, and both of them great servants of that particular community. But Jim did retire to the North Coast and had some health troubles in later years. I also wanted to make some comments on behalf of Councillor Hammond, who was also a great friend of his. In a local sense, one thing that hadn't been mentioned that Jim, I think, was a key force behind was, of course, the Downfall Creek Environment Centre and a lot of the work around the mountains to mangroves in the north side. And we were at Councillor Davis and I were at a meeting last night of the Bunya Lions, who we noted earlier had that traditional rivalry with Stafford Rotary, but they mentioned Jim's passing at the meeting, and they knew him well, and it was a sad moment for the club. But the first thing they said, Jim got the Downfall Creek Centre built, and that was a great thing that he did for that particular Northside community that's still remembered by active community people today. So, you know, as I say, Jim was great fun. He had been in poor health. We wish Jan and his children, Christina, Sally Ann and Stephen, and Jim's grandchildren, we wish them every condolence and every comfort in this time.
Thank you, Councillor Wines. Are there any further speakers?
Thank you, Mr Chair.
Councillor Owen, was that you? Sorry, there's three people on the one screen. Thank you. Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman, I speak today in support of this motion of condolence for the late Jim Wilding, and to Jan and his children and extended family, I do offer my sincere condolences. Jim's last campaign in 1997 was my first campaign, and to say he was larger than life, as other people have done, is so true to Jim's character. He was very much a true Aussie larrikin, but he had a heart of gold. He genuinely cared about people, and the very fact that the roses on budget day have been mentioned, that's something that was his style. He would often connect with people in a different way, but on a very personal level, not just a political level. It has been said that he did focus his speeches, and the bet was on every year whether he would start his budget speech with this ALP budget is based on the coal grey mantle of socialism, and the times when we heard that, it was typical that was Jim's style. He definitely was a true local champion. He relentlessly campaigned for a better outcome for his community, and to say he was parochial about the McDowell ward would be an understatement. He worked tirelessly, and can I also say that he did have a very close connection with the One People's League of Australia through his family connections, and he did a lot of work with Indigenous Australians as well. Throughout his life, he was very much a character who will not be forgotten, and his commitment to service is his legacy to our city of Brisbane, and particularly to the northern suburbs which he represented. There have been some other reflections as well as to some of his circumstances when he would stand up for what he believed was right, including when a former Lord Mayor, Jim Sawley, decided that he wanted to ban Santa being in the mall. So what did the then Councillor Wilding do? He dressed up as Santa, went to the mall with a big bag of lollies and started noisily handing them out to children. And that was one of his ways of just demonstrating that there is a greater perspective. There was another time I recall that he was also singing loudly, leaving on a jet plane in response to the then Lord Mayor's planned overseas trip. And I think between him and former Councillor Hinchcliffe, they had, and his rendition of New York, New York, they had a bit of a challenge going. But Jim Wilding was greatly missed when he retired. He was one of a number of councillors who genuinely had strength of respect on both sides of the chamber. He based a lot of his decision-making on real-life experience. He was connected to his community, but most importantly, he was passionate about service and serving his locals. So to Jan and the family, we extend our condolences. Jim was one of a kind, and he will be missed.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Are there any further speakers? There being no further speakers, we will now put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Councillors, can I draw your attention to the notified motion appreciation of our sister cities agreement, and can I acknowledge the representatives of our sister cities in the chamber? Lord Mayor, could you please move the motion?
Thank you. I move that this council recognises the special anniversaries with Brisbane's sister cities, Auckland and Semarang, celebrating 35 and 30 years respectively. Brisbane City Council reinforces our commitment to these sister city relationships as our city continues to evolve, building stronger relationships through economic, civic and cultural exchanges, all while developing new and improved links through tourism, trade and business.
Can we have a seconder, please?
Seconded.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It has been moved by the Lord Mayor and seconded by the Deputy Mayor that this council recognises the special anniversary of Brisbane's sister cities, Auckland and Semarang, celebrating 35 and 30 years respectively. Brisbane City Council reinforces our commitment to these sister city relationships as our city continues to evolve, building stronger relationships through economic, civic and cultural exchanges, all while developing new and improved links through tourism, trade and business. Is there any debate? Lord Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I also want to acknowledge the members of the Sister City Steering Committee who are here in the public gallery, particularly Mr. Ross Humphreys, Chair and Kobe Representative of the Brisbane Sister Cities Steering Committee. Also, Mrs. Sushanti Glodic, the Semarang representative on the committee. Mrs. Raylwyn Bailey, the Hyderabad representative on the committee. And David Wijaya, who is the Indonesian community representative on the Lord Mayor's Multicultural Roundtable. There are also a number of people, I'm told, watching online, the Auckland Council, Semarang City Government, the Australian Consulate General in Surabaya, also the Consul for Economic Affairs from the Consulate General of the Republic of Indonesia. So thank you for your participation virtually in this meeting. First of all, Auckland. This year, Brisbane celebrates the 35th anniversary of our sister city agreement with Auckland. It's an agreement which was signed in 1988, when in fact the Auckland City Council was here for Expo 88 in Brisbane. The signing of this agreement at Expo shines a light on what Expo did for Brisbane as a city. It helped put our city on the global stage and created partnerships which might not have otherwise occurred. The businesses created and the partnerships forged out of Expo are still lasting, and our sister city arrangement with Auckland is one of these examples. Back then, the agreement was drafted to foster sporting, educational and social exchanges, as well as developing the existing links of tourism and trade. This remains the case today. When you look at both Brisbane and Auckland, our cities are very similar in nature. We are both supersized councils formed by amalgamations of many councils into one. In fact, Auckland is the largest council by population in New Zealand with 1.8 million residents. So that's more residents than Brisbane City Council, and they were formed by the amalgamation of 7 large councils into one. Brisbane is a city that almost 100 years ago amalgamated 20 councils and authorities into one, and today we have 1.28 million residents. We both love our sport. We're both were lucky to host the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup jointly. And at the same time, we have both been dealt significant blows as a result of natural disasters. Both in recent times with flooding events in Brisbane last year, and also devastating flooding in Auckland as well in recent times. When Auckland was flooding in January and February this year, we knew all too well what they were going through. We made contact and we offered our full support to Auckland City Council, the Mayor of Auckland. And that was something that was expressed as their great appreciation when I was honoured to meet the Mayor just last week at the Asia Pacific City Summit. We're all still going through the process of recovering from those events. But these sort of things do bring us closer because we have so much in common and also so many common challenges as well. As I mentioned, Mayor Wayne Brown led a delegation to Brisbane together with their CEO, Phil Wilson, as well as their Economic Development Agency as a part of the Asia Pacific Cities Summit and Mayors Forum. We're fortunate to have strong ties with Auckland, and I'd like to express my gratitude to the following people and organisations in New Zealand who are ongoing supporters of our sister city agreement. First of all, the Mayor himself, Wayne Brown, CEO Phil Wilson, and their predecessors as well. The Auckland Council, Auckland Unlimited, which is Auckland's Economic Development Agency. I'd also like to acknowledge local support from Mr. Bill Dobby, the Consul General for New Zealand and Japan in, New Zealand in Sydney, the New Zealand Trade and Enterprise Office in Brisbane, once again members of the Brisbane Sister Cities Steering Committee, and any other organisations in the past who, and to this day, continue to support the strong relationship. Today, once again, we recommit ourselves to this important relationship and we look forward to the coming years working together. Semarang. We celebrate an important anniversary with our sister city Semarang, which is the capital and largest city of Central Java in Indonesia. I'm told there's some representatives from Semarang tuning in and watching today's motion, and welcome to those people. Brisbane's relationship with Semarang is a little deeper than what is presented on paper. It's a relationship which developed over several years prior to the signing of the actual agreement. And the Sister City Agreement officially started on the 11th of January 1993. And across those 30 years, we have both been building our cities together, supporting each other in numerous common experiences. It's an agreement which is focused on working in the spirit of friendship and cooperation to promote closer economic and cultural relationships by supporting each other in the areas of business, trade, investment, education, sports and culture. Semarang has sister city relationships with only 2 cities, Brisbane being one of them and the other one being Da Nang in Vietnam. We are fortunate to be one of just 2 cities working with Semarang to develop and support our relationship, and we greatly appreciate that. Since 1999, Semarang has been a strong supporter of the Asia Pacific City Summit, attending every summit since this time. This year, we had 2 delegates from Semarang attending the APCS, and even in 2021, despite the pandemic, the Mayor at the time registered and participated as a virtual delegate in the 2021 summit. In recent times, and to mark the anniversary, Council has been working closely with the Semarang City Government on a number of studies and forums. From March to May this year, some virtual seminars were held with over 400 attendees discussing topics which affect both of our cities, including flood management and mitigation, urban planning and housing, as well as smart city initiatives. In addition to this, the University of Queensland, Brisbane City Council, Semarang City Government and a local university in Indonesia are working on a research project about pathways for climate change adaptation and an analysis of flooding in Semarang. I want to thank a number of people from the Semarang community who continue to work on our Sister City Agreement. First of all, the Mayor, Rahayu, from the Mayor of Semarang, His Excellency Dr. Pramono, the Ambassador of Indonesia to Australia, the Semarang City Government, also the Consul General for Indonesia in Sydney, once again members of our Brisbane Sister City Steering Committee, including Sushanti I mentioned before, and other members of that steering committee. There are tangible benefits to the City of Brisbane through both of these Sister City agreements, and once again we celebrate this milestone by recommitting ourselves to these important relationships. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Are there any further speakers? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I also rise to recognise and celebrate, I suppose, the relationship that we've held with Auckland and Semarang as very important sister cities over many, many decades. As the Lord Mayor said, with Auckland, a 35-year anniversary since the Expo in 1988, and it was actually signed under former Lord Mayor Sally Ann Atkinson and Mayor Dame Catherine Tizard of Auckland. So on top of being the same size, multicultural, bigger cities, also the first 2 female mayors of those cities to sign off the sister city relationship as well. And it was absolutely thrilling to have Auckland back here last week at the Asia Pacific City Summit to confirm that our ties are just as strong today as they are 35 years ago. The Lord Mayor mentioned we do share a lot of similarities, including our sport, which at the moment we're not talking about rugby, but there's many other things. We are very happy to have shared FIFA World Cup with them as well. But we've also got a very singular passion to become global destinations for tourism. And those economic and trade ties between our cities have been proven most valuable in our relationship as we've been through some of the hardships of the last few years, as the Lord Mayor mentioned, and we're looking at the runway in the next few years and how Auckland can work with us as well. We've welcomed a number of delegations into Brisbane over many years and reciprocal ones into Auckland as well. Last year, IRMA, International Relations and Multicultural Affairs, and BEDA, our Brisbane Economic Development Agency, worked with Trade and Investment Queensland on the New Zealand Rapid Transit Transit and Urban Development Summit. So that's when we had 24 New Zealand national government local agencies coming to visit us, including the government representatives in Brisbane, where Councillor Murphy spoke to them about the public and active transport emissions initiatives we have here in Brisbane, and they were very excited to share our knowledge and what we have been learning through Metro and other major infrastructure projects as well. BETA often welcomes our Auckland Unlimited, their equivalent that they have there as well, discussing how cities can grow their industries, strategise around investment opportunities, and how major events can be enormous leveraging for the success of cities as well. So we look forward to many more years of collaboration and exchange between our cities, and thank the representatives that are online and in the chamber today from Auckland City Council, and particularly Mayor Brown, for visiting us last week for the Asia Pacific City Summit. Samarang, as well as 30 years this year, 3 decades of mutual friendship, first formalised by Lord Mayor Jim Sawley and the Mayor of Samarang, Suristro Suharto, at the time in 1993. Again, at this time, it was a very strategic move. TIQ had an office in Samarang, and the agreement was signed specifically for us to support and benefit from the state-to-state relationship between Queensland and Central Java, and then we established the Brisbane and Samarang as well. So Samarang has grown into a thriving place of business and trade due to its strategic position on the coast of Java, and is one of the largest container points in Indonesia. So that is some great industries and growing opportunities in that area as well. Lord Mayor Graham Quirk took 24 business-based Brisbane representatives to Samarang in 2018, celebrating our then 25-year anniversary with the city, and we soon welcome back Mayor Prahadi and the Regional Secretary to share, as the Lord Mayor said, our learnings around resilience and flood resilience and infrastructure planning as well. We have a very well-established Indonesian community in Brisbane, and a very special bond that our city shares with those communities as well. The Lord Mayor thanked many of the people that were online in the chamber. I just wanted to call out also Mr David Wijaya, who is in the chamber, who's our representative for Indonesia on the Lord Mayor's Multicultural Roundtable, and he does a wonderful job in that role. So thank you for everyone joining us today, and we look forward to continuing these strong relationships for many decades to come.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Marks.
Yes, thank you, Mr Chair. Today I rise in support of this motion and to celebrate the invaluable sister city relationships with Auckland and Samarang. Unfortunately, I've not been to Samarang, so I can't comment on that particular place, and I'm sure I'll get there sometime, David. However, Auckland, another different story. I've been there many times. In fact, I've lived in Auckland for a time being, and we do know that Brisbane and Auckland boast a very robust civic, cultural and economic bonds, and these ties have led to tangible exchanges between the two cities, their councils and economic development agencies. Remarkably, nearly 42,000 residents in Brisbane were born in New Zealand. I'm one of them. I'm the token Kiwi in the chamber. And as per the 2021 census, then that constitutes the 3rd largest population, trailing only after Australia and the United Kingdom. I actually had the privilege of being the official meeting greeting party for Mayor Len Brown at the time. That was back in 2010 to 2016. He was the mayor then. So at the time, the Lord Mayor gave me the job of meeting that current mayor at the Brisbane airport. I got to go right up to the doorway and meet the mayor as he came off the plane, introduce myself, walk him through. We walked through customs. We went around the back way. I've never been allowed to go back there since, but we got the special way that we went to go through, which was pretty cool. We had a little civic reception there, and it was one of my great honours just as a Kiwi to actually be that special representative. Obviously, I am a dual citizen. Can I say the timing is quite perfect, because not only is it my daughter's birthday today, but this day, 29 years ago, my husband and I became Australian citizens. So I thought that was quite interesting, because I remember looking at the paperwork just the other day. It was because of the sister city relationship. We actually moved here in '86, and obviously Expo '88 was a big deal for us. And I know back then the Kiwi Pavilion was the most visited Expo pavilion of the time. It was very spectacular. So Lord Mayor mentioned obviously some of the devastation events that we have shared with Auckland, the most recent being the flooding. I unfortunately was there at the flooding of that particular time, and that was to attend my father's funeral. So I was due to fly back into to meet Chambers Fairhair the Tuesday morning. All the flights were cancelled, so I unfortunately missed Chambers that day due to that flooding. And then not recently, long ago, they actually had flooding actually in the actual airport as well. So yeah, and my sister has just been here staying with me for a little while. She took great delight in coming out to some of the events with me. I took great delight in taking her some of those events with me, and she's gone back home now and it's raining again as per usual. But back to the special relationship between Brisbane and Auckland, we also provide a platform for local business community to seek out fresh proposals. So one such initiative is the Brisbane City Council's International Internship Program. So this program, they match domestic students from multicultural backgrounds and international students starting from Brisbane sister cities with local businesses. So it's designed to support Brisbane businesses access tertiary student talent to leverage student knowledge, cultural understanding and language skills to grow their business in both domestic and international markets. So the International Internship Program was launched in 2018, its first intake in 2019, and since then the program has supported 37 Brisbane business hosts and 58 international interns. So this year we welcomed 5 students from sister cities, including Chongqing, Kaohsiung, Auckland and Semarang, all during their anniversaries year. So I want to say the special relationship between Brisbane and Auckland continues to support our local businesses, whether it be city, family, cultural, business, tourism, investment or sporting linkages. And sporting linkages, can I mention the rugby just off the top of my head? There's no doubt that Brisbane and Auckland have a very close relationship and we look forward to even more in the years ahead. Thank you, Mr Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Marks, and thank you for not mentioning the All Blacks. Is there any further debate? Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you. I'll rise very briefly just to speak. Whilst I love New Zealand and I've been there many times, we've heard lots of lovely things about New Zealand today, and I support and endorse them all and value the sister city relationship. I did want to say just something very briefly about Indonesia. It's a country that I visited on multiple occasions in my previous employment. I have never been to Semarang, I'm sorry to say, but I've been to Jakarta, Yogyakarta, Kalimantan, to Aceh after the tsunami, and we flew in and out through Medan through the airport there. So I've seen a little bit of the country, and perhaps one day I'll get the opportunity to see Semarang as well. Indonesia is a beautiful country. It is our nearest neighbour. It is really an extraordinary place. It is very diverse. It has wonderful, friendly people. It has some of the most beautiful beaches and coastal parts of the world. Unfortunately, they, like Australia, are prone to disastrous weather and natural disasters, and I know that that has had a catastrophic impact on many places in Indonesia. I just wanted to say that we greatly value and appreciate our sister city relationship with Semarang. We respect and admire our neighbours in Indonesia, who are great neighbours, and we respect and admire one of the largest democratic Muslim countries in the world. So thank you and happy anniversary.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Are there any further speakers? There being no further speakers, I'll now put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Councillor Hutton, confirmation of minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the minutes of the 4,722nd meeting held on Tuesday, the 12th of September 2023 be received, taken as read and confirmed.
Seconded.
It has been moved by Councillor Hutton and seconded by Councillor Mackay that the minutes of the 4,722nd meeting of Council held on the 12th of September 2023 be received, taken as read and confirmed. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Councillors, we move into question time. Are there any questions of the Lord Mayor or Civic Cabinet Chair of any standing committee? Councillor Mackay.
Thanks, Chair. My question is to the Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, times are tough. and the residents right across the city are feeling the pinch of this cost of living crisis. Can you please report to the Chamber the latest steps you have proactively taken to reduce any potential burden on taxpayers?
Councillors, I'm going to remind the chamber that we will hear questions and answers in silence, please. Lord Mayor, you've got the call.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. As you rightly pointed out, times are tough across the city with the cost of living crisis, with people in their home budgets and household costs experiencing increased pressure in a whole range of different ways, whether it's groceries or whether it's the things that they need to buy, the services they need. There's pressure on all of it. And just like the people of Brisbane, governments aren't exempt from these pressures. Just last week we read about more than $1.3 billion worth of unexpected spending at the state government level. Unexpected spending at the state government level. And so every level of government, people in their homes are facing these pressures. We can't pretend that these are not real pressures, and the decision that we have to make is what do we do in response? And really it's quite a simple decision. Do we make sensible adjustments and reductions in spending, or do we pass costs on to ratepayers? That's really what it comes down to. It is as simple as that. They are the only two choices: to reduce spending in a sensible manner, or to allow increased rates in the future flow through to residents, which only adds further to those cost of living pressures and adds further pressure. And so today I announced that we would do the sensible and the right thing, which is to find savings within Council's existing budget, targeting a 10% budget saving across the budget so that we can keep costs down for ratepayers. By doing this, we're putting downward pressure on rates in the future. And it's consistent with exactly what we have done in the budgets that I have been Lord Mayor. The very first budget as Lord Mayor, we have obviously prioritised building infrastructure, but we've also prioritised keeping rates down. And I was able, as Lord Mayor, to deliver the very first rate freeze in 35 years during the pandemic.
One moment, Lord Mayor. Councillors, we're 2 minutes, 16 minutes in, and you still can't remember that you were told that we were going to hear questions and answers in silence. Lord Mayor.
Thank you. The pandemic saw significant reductions in income and foregone expenditure for Brisbane City Council. And in fact, the budget impact of the pandemic was in excess of $120 million. Yet at the same time, we kept rates down for residents and delivered the first rate freeze in 35 years. Fast forward to the floods, an incredibly costly event. Total cost of more than $600 million with a hit to the council budget of $300 million. And so a significant financial impact on top of the $120 million from the pandemic. Yet, once again, we've worked hard to prioritise the rebuilding and to keep rates down. And that's why in the budget that was just released, we kept rates to less than half of inflation. It was a very deliberate choice. It would have been very easy to say inflation is 7% and our costs are going up by more than that. Rates need to be higher. But no, we didn't do that because we were conscious of the cost of living impacts on ratepayers. We also delivered at the same time an $80 million cost of living relief package, all of which is being delivered, all of which will be delivered, none of which will be impacted by cost reductions. And so our priority in keeping rates down is shown by our record, and that is also our focus for the future, because if we don't act now, we will see month on month future cost escalations, future cost pressures, and by the end of the financial year, there will be a significant challenge. And as I said, if we don't act now, a stitch in time saves costs for ratepayers down the track. That is our priority. Now, I know that there's already been criticism of this decision. It is easy to criticise, but if you don't support sensible cost reductions, and a 10% reduction, I think, is not excessive. It is We've heard an interjection here, obviously not supporting a 10% reduction. Many households have done even more significant reductions in their own budgets. Many households have...
Councillors.
Now,
Councillor Strunk.
Now, what we see here on display is a very clear sense from the Green Labor Coalition of Chaos that they think that government money is different to household budgets. They think that government should just keep spending.
Councillor Massey.
Yes, I did. And I delivered a budget that kept rates down to less than half of inflation, and we're determined to make sure that Brisbane residents pay the lowest residential rates in South East Queensland. Our commitment is that we will continue, while ever we on this side of the chamber are in office, we will continue to deliver the lowest rates in South East Queensland. And so, by making sensible reductions,
Lord Mayor,
we can help keep rates down for Brisbane residents.
Councillors, I will have no problem warning any of you, formally or otherwise. I will say it again. Questions and answers are to be heard in silence. Are there any further questions of the Lord Mayor or Civic Cabinet Chairs? Councillor Collier.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the Chair of Finance and City Governance Committee, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Cunningham, do you support the Lord Mayor cutting suburban projects, including in your ward, to fund inner city projects?
Councillor Cunningham.
Thanks, Mr Chair. What I support is responsible financial management, and that is something that this Lord Mayor continues to deliver for the City of Brisbane. You see, Mr Chair, we must maintain a balanced budget in Brisbane. We must take the corrective action now so that residents don't have to pay more in the future. This 10% savings drive across the whole organisation, across all wards, across our ward budgets is required. It is required so that the residents of Brisbane do not pay more later. It is their money. You see, Mr Chair, those on the opposite side seem to forget that it's not their money. It is not their money. It is the residents of Brisbane. And we must be financially responsible. And yes, you know what? Sometimes that means making very difficult decisions. Nobody wants to make these decisions, but we must take corrective action now. Mr Chair, of course, I expect naturally that there will be some deferrals and impact to my ward. Absolutely, there will be right across Brisbane, because we are making a 10% reduction in our expenditure. But you know what? 90% of things will get delivered. And that's what we are focusing on, because that's what residents expect. You know, when I speak to my residents in Coorparoo...
Councillors on my left.
They tell me about their mortgage repayments going up. They tell me that they're experiencing cost of living pressures in their own household budgets. You know what they tell to me? This week, you know, we're not going to have our date night this week. It's really disappointing, but we've cut date night. All households right across Brisbane are having to make difficult decisions and to spend less of their income to make sure that the essentials are paid for. And those are difficult decisions, but households right across Brisbane, including in my own ward, are making those difficult decisions. The irresponsible thing to do would be to continue to spend. That is the Labor way. The Greens expect...
Just one moment, Councillor Hammond. Councillor Massey. Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Collier. Councillor Cassidy. Silence, please. Councillor Hammond. Sorry, Cunningham. My apologies.
Thanks,
Fiona.
Mr Chair. The past few years, Mr Chair, have been difficult for all levels of government of all political persuasions. The combination of COVID, of floods, of inflation, of cost of living doesn't mean that Brisbane City Council has been immune from that, okay? And while we've been able to manage and maintain...
Councillor Johnson.
While we have been able to manage and maintain a balanced budget, we must now take that corrective action, because otherwise residents will have to pay for it. There are growing, on a very serious note, Mr Chair, the opposition are being quite flippant here, but on a very serious note, there are growing concerns in our global economy that if we don't take action, inflation will continue to bite. Costs are stubbornly high across the board, Mr Chair. It's not just major projects, it's medium and small projects. It's right across the board. So councillors should know when they're talking to their outcome managers, for example, about their suburban enhancement fund, that the cost of footpaths, oh, actually, Labor team wouldn't know that the cost of footpaths have gone up because they don't build any. Yeah, right, sorry. But the cost of footpaths, the cost of playgrounds, the cost of everything that council does is increasing. But for them, it seems they're all about the point scoring. They're all about themselves rather than taking a responsible and considered and a measured approach to this, to protect Brisbane ratepayers. That is what we are doing. You see, they only offer solutions to spend more, to hire more...
Councillor Cunningham, your time has expired. Councillor Hutton.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the Chair of Economic Development and the Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games Committee, Councillor Adams. Deputy Mayor, in June this year, the Schrinner Council put forward our plan for Kurilpa to become Brisbane's most sustainable precinct. Can you please update the Chamber on the latest in this proposal to help address the housing crisis?
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hutton, and I'll take the interjection from the Leader of the Opposition. How many new homes are there going to be there? Way more possible, up to 10,000 that would have been possible without this Kurilpa precinct plan.
Which you voted against.
Which, of course, you voted against.
Councillors. Deputy Mayor.
I would like to thank the Deputy Premier and having a great foresight in his cooperation and commitment to seeing the Kurilpa precinct plan through, and welcome his approval of the TLPI for the Kurilpa precinct, which was gazetted last week. It's a fantastic example of the great outcomes that can be achieved when we put politics aside and work together. Housing pressures are being felt right across the nation, and Brisbane, of course, is no exception, probably tighter than most of the other cities as the fastest growing capital in Australia. And we're not surprised more and more people are planning to move to Brisbane. Why not? We are a city alive with opportunity and unstoppable momentum heading into 2032 and beyond. But as our city grows, we know we need more housing than ever before. Managing sustained population growth and planning for the supply of affordable and diverse housing in right locations across different income levels and life stages requires a considered and balanced plan. The state government are looking at South East Queensland, reviewing the regional plan and setting new priorities and targets for each council. We know South East Queensland needs to build an additional 900,000 new homes in 2046 to cater for the forecasted population increase of 2.2 million across the region. For Brisbane, this means an additional 200,000 new homes over the planning horizon. But what is also interesting in this plan is the shift between infill and greenfield targets, requiring more infill under this revised plan with a target of 60% of all new homes, setting a clear message that growth needs to be catered for within existing urban areas rather than expanding into the greenfield areas, which is exactly what we don't have in Brisbane. We don't have greenfield areas, but we are growing. It is very clear, up, not out. We are committed to preserving our suburbs and our environment, so releasing more land is simply not an option.
Councillor Massey, we do not call out across the chamber. Deputy Mayor.
And that is why we need to be smart about how and where we plan for new housing, look for opportunities in renewable, underutilised parts of our city and optimising existing and planned infrastructure. We're committed to tackling these challenges head-on and make no apologies for taking real action to deliver for Brisbane. And we have a strong record here at Brisbane Council in supplying adequate and diverse supply of housing through our city plan. Now is not our time to take the foot off the accelerator. But as we are hearing clearly today, with mounting cost pressures, industry and construction constraints, supply and labour shortages, we need to do more with less, and we need to create new and innovative opportunities to facilitate more housing. We are absolutely committed to preserving Brisbane's character, our enviable lifestyle and our rich natural environment. We are committed to building a sustainable future.
Just one moment, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Massey, please. It's the first meeting back. We do not need to be calling out across the chamber. Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
The Kurilpa precinct is our anti-sprawl approach to housing that will unlock thousands of new homes to create what will become Brisbane's most sustainable community. And I will take the interjections, the continual interjections from the councillor for Woolloongabba, who keeps saying, what about West End, or what about West End? This is the councillor and her colleagues who hail West Village as being a great outcome for the community. That's exactly what we want to see. More of ground plane interaction, tall, open, urban, common areas.
Point of order, Councillor Massey.
Misrepresentation. I've never held Well Village. I've never talked about Well Village.
Councillor Massey, I don't think you've actually spoken yet. Deputy Mayor.
She hasn't spoken, but she's not being quiet. In exchange for the additional height, the community will be assured better outcomes on the ground.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor. Point of order, Councillor Johnson.
Yes, I believe that Councillor Adams is imputing motive upon Councillor Massey.
I don't uphold your point of order, Councillor Johnson.
By claiming
Thank you.
that she has
Deputy Mayor.
said certain things.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Johnson, I've already ruled it out of order. Can you please resume your seat?
Is
Deputy
imputing motive not a point of order anymore?
Councillor Johnson, resume your seat.
I'm just checking.
Councillor Johnson.
Still? I'm just checking. Is imputing motive
Councillor
still...
Johnson, I consider that you are displaying unsuitable meeting conduct, and in accordance with section 21(4) of the meeting's local law, I hereby request you to follow my instruction. I have ruled your point of order out of order.
And I'm just asking,
can you please resume your seat?
Is imputed motive...
Councillor Johnson, please resume your seat.
Is imputing motive still a point of order? That's my question, Mr Chairman. It's a reasonable procedural
Councillor
question.
Johnson, resume your seat. Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Mr Chairman, is imputing motive still a point of order? I've already said point of order.
Councillor Johnson.
I just want to know. It's just a simple procedural question I'm asking you as the chairperson of council.
Councillor Johnson, as you have failed to comply with the request to take remedial action for your unsuitable meeting conduct,
I did sit down.
I hereby warn you, in accordance with section 21(6) of Meetings Local Law 2001, that failing to comply with my request to resume your seat and allow the Deputy Mayor to finish speaking may result in an order being issued.
Point of order.
Point of order, Councillor Johnson.
Yes, is imputing motive still a point of order under the meeting's local laws?
I do not uphold your point of order. Deputy Mayor.
Point of order, Mr Chair. This is a question, and I am asking you a procedural question based on the meeting's local law. Is imputing motive still a point of order under the meeting's local law?
Thank you, Councillor Massey. I'm the Chair of Council, not yourself. Councillor Johnson, you're really pushing boundaries this afternoon. I really do. And it's actually my opinion that matters in this place, not yours. Just give me one moment. Councillor Johnson, to respond to your request for my ruling, imputing motive is, however, the Deputy Mayor was stating a fact that Councillor Massey was speaking quite regularly during the meeting, as the minutes will be reflected. Deputy...
Point of order, Mr Chair. Point of order, Mr Chair.
Point of order, Councillor Johnson.
My point of order had nothing to do with Councillor Adams. I'd just like to put that on the record.
Oh,
thank you for clarifying that imputing motive is still a valid point of order to raise in this place. And I would ask that you withdraw the warning that you have given me, given that I was asking a procedural question in the appropriate way.
Councillor Johnson, can I have some time to reflect on that, and I will get back to you? Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Let me sum up on Kurilpa Precinct. Allowing new buildings to go taller will give a great outcome for the community. 5 Green Star ratings, new minimum green plot ratio so they'll be more sustainable and energy, more affordable and diverse housing options. On the ground, we will see design excellence, and with the cultural epicentre being here in Brisbane, every new building will need to deliver 4 times the standard of art contribution to the community. It's a bold and ambitious plan, but it's also a sound and responsible plan. And again, I thank the Deputy Premier for seeing this plan through and working with our council to deliver better outcomes for our community.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks very much, Chair. My question is to the Lord Mayor. Today, Lord Mayor, you have confirmed that after 20 years of LNP rule, Brisbane residents are well and truly paying more but getting less. Can you tell the people of Brisbane today what services and projects will be cut to fill your $400 million budget black hole? And we know that officers have been working on this for weeks and weeks and weeks, so you should know the answer today.
Lord Mayor.
Yes, it is definitely true that Brisbane residents are paying less and getting more. They're paying less than every other council in South East Queensland, and they're getting more. They get more investment than ever before in new infrastructure to meet the needs of our growing city, and they will continue to get 90% of that as well going forward. And they will continue to get 90% without paying significant increases in rates that they would see under a Green Labor coalition of chaos. We know for a fact, now Councillor Cassidy wants to see all the information. He wants to see the list. And what I can say is I'd like to see the list of how he's going to pay for his $100 million unfunded commitment on footpaths. Remember that? He said he would spend $100 million extra on footpaths over 4 years, no mention of how he would pay for it. That's their very first commitment in the election. Actually, no, very second. They promised to reduce speed limits on 90% of roads to 30 k's an hour. Their second promise was a $100 million unfunded commitment to put concrete in every street.
Point of order, Councillor Johnson.
Yes, Mr Chair, the meeting's local laws require the question not to be debated but to be answered. I am interested in which services the Lord Mayor is planning to cut, and I believe the opposition leader asked for a list. So could you please instruct the Lord Mayor to answer the question as required under the meeting's local law?
Lord Mayor, you have just under 4 minutes remaining to answer the question.
Thank you, Mr Chair. And so Councillor Cassidy likes to ask other people for information, but he won't provide the information on how he is going to pay for his unfunded $100 million election commitment to put concrete in every street.
Sorry, Councillor Johnson, I couldn't hear you over the noise
well,
that was coming.
Well, the clerks clearly would, because they were looking at me and they're further away, but, you know.
They might have had something pop up on their screen. My apologies.
Don't think so, yes.
You have a point of order.
Yes. The meeting's local law is specific that you are not allowed to debate the question, but
Understood.
You must answer the question. Can you please draw the Lord Mayor back to answering the question about which services and projects are going to be cut, as he's announced today?
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Just give me 1 second. What's he got? 3.5. What's that? That's 3.5. Lord Mayor, you've got just under 3.5 minutes to answer the question.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Look, I'm not debating the question. I'm calling out the hypocrisy of the questioner. And we see that week in, week out. And so I will tell you this, and this is what I confirmed this morning. We will go through the normal budget review process to identify these savings. We will do that, and we'll be doing that over the coming weeks, and we will make sure that they are identified through the normal budget review process. We are looking for 10% spending reductions because it is the sensible thing to do. And as I said again, if Labor councillors, like they appear to be doing, oppose sensible spending reductions, then it's clear that they support higher rates. There's only two choices here. There's only two choices here.
Just one moment, Lord Mayor. Now, Councillor Johnson jumped up on a point of order and I couldn't hear her before because of the noise. I have asked that questions and answers be heard in silence. I don't think it's fair on other councillors if they wish to rise on a point of order. Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Chair. And so we will go through the normal process to identify savings. And I would point out as well, this is something we have had to do before. We have done this following the flood last year, where we paused or deferred some projects. And once again, Labor kicked and screamed, but in the end, it enabled us to deliver a rate increase which was less than half the rate of inflation. And so these decisions are important. Say again, if you do not support spending reductions, then you must support higher rates. And it's very clear which camp the Labor Green Coalition of Chaos is in, because they're quite happy to announce $100 million big spending promises without saying how it's going to be paid for. Well, I can tell you how it will be paid for. The residents of Brisbane will pay for it, because they certainly don't support spending reductions. They've made that clear today.
Point of order, Councillor Johnson.
Yes. Mr Chairman, I rise on the third point of order and I draw your attention to section 33 of the Meetings Local Law, subsection 8. In answering a question, the following general rule should apply. Neither the Lord Mayor nor a civic chair shall debate the subject of the question. The answer will be relevant and succinct. The question was about which services and projects are going to be cut, and the Lord Mayor has spent the vast majority of the time discussing the Labor Party, who aren't doing the cuts. I, like every other Brisbane resident, are interested in the answer. Could you please ensure the Meetings Local Law is followed and the Lord Mayor answers the question? And if he doesn't know it, he should take it on notice.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson, for your point of order. Lord Mayor, you have just over 1 minute left.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Well, maybe if Councillor Johnson wasn't so busy interjecting, Mr Chair, she would have heard that I answered the question. We will identify the savings through the normal budget review process. I say it again. We will identify the savings through the normal budget review process. And they will come through to Council for approval. The budget reviews will come through to Council for approval. And so feel free to vote yes or no, your choice. When it comes through, you have that choice. In this democratic environment that we have, in this democratic forum, you will get to vote yes or no to sensible cost savings. But what we know is if you vote no, then you support higher rates. It's as simple as that.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillors, please.
Point of order.
Councillor. Sorry, point of order.
Mr Chairman, the Lord Mayor has just stated if we don't support what he says, we will be supporting higher rates. That is imputing motive, Mr Chairman, and I would ask you to ask the Lord Mayor to withdraw it. As you've outlined, it is a contravention of the Meetings Local Law.
Lord Mayor, do you care to pass a comment on that point of order?
I think it's pretty clear that if you don't support reductions in spending, then rates will go up. It's a statement of fact.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Hutton.
Hang on, point of order, Mr Chairman.
Point of order, Councillor Johnson.
Mr Chairman, I don't know why you just asked the Lord Mayor whether he'd like to pass comment about a procedural issue that I have raised with you, which is a valid procedural issue under the Meetings Law, as you've confirmed here today. So I find it offensive that I've been accused of an ultimatum and motive has been implied in that ultimatum, and I would ask that it be withdrawn because it's not a statement of fact, it's imputing motive, and I would like it withdrawn.
Councillor Johnson, I'm not going to uphold that point of order. Councillor Hutton.
Thank you, Mr Chair. My question is to the Chair of Economic Development and the Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games Committee, Councillor Adams. Deputy Mayor, following last week's successful Asia Pacific City Summits Forum, can you please touch on Brisbane's latest award, highlighting our green credentials?
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hutton. I am very excited to share with the Chamber some of the outcomes of the APCS, and I'm sure next week I'll have more chance to expand on what a wonderful forum it was. Over 1,000 delegates and 118 mayors, and many of them not for the first time to Brisbane. But one thing the Lord Mayor and I heard repeatedly that week was how much everybody loved Brisbane. The lifestyle, the city, the way it's grown if they've been here before, and how it's grown sustainably. So we are most excited to have been awarded the gold certification under the UN Habitat Sustainable Development Goals. This is a very exciting announcement to recognise Brisbane's achievements and unwavering efforts towards sustainability. We are the first city in Australia and only the second one in the entire world to attain this certification. We gained that recognition because of the way we are a modern, vibrant, culturally rich city that prioritises being clean, green and sustainable and embraces our incredible climate and livability. We are the whole package when it comes to a sustainable city, but this has not happened by accident. The Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayors before him have put sustainability at the front of everything we do. Environmental sustainability, absolutely economic sustainability, community resilience, cultural inclusion, prioritising and celebrating everything our residents love about living in Brisbane.
Councillor Cassidy, Deputy Mayor.
The achievement of gold status is not the end, though. It's just one step to our journey to becoming even more sustainable as we continue to grow. The UN's SDG Cities Global Initiative is about getting cities to make change from the ground up, to work towards achieving the global agenda for sustainability, recognising that all change starts with small movements that then go into greater impact. And this program has been designed to bring about and embed sustainability at a local level across the globe. Having achieved silver certification in 2022, the first Australian city to have done so, we are well and truly committed to this journey. We are working closely and collaborating with the UN to refine the program and become a leading example in this space, to be able to help and support other cities to join the initiative. There's 120 participating, and we aim to have 1,000 cities by 2030. So, what do we do to achieve this? We worked through a voluntary local review. What are some of the initiatives we've undertaken? We looked at the 7 Sustainable Development Goals set on the 2030 agenda, centred around social, economic and environmental sustainability. And then we had a look at how we would implement those goals and make sure we could show to the UN that we have a very high baseline here in Brisbane to start with, but there are things we can still work on as well. We're also looking at how to best apply the measures across a local level, and we have now piloted the action-oriented voluntary local review with the UN. What the UN did recognise about Brisbane City Council is that we are not just talking the talk, we are walking the walk. And our assessment was centred about 4 themes: resilience, active health and green, inclusive, diverse and equitable, and livable and connected. The review works through each theme, demonstrating how our vision and strategies align with SDG targets, addressing what affects us as a city as we continue to grow, and continue how to plan to improve on these targets and manage growth in a sustainable way. And there were so many initiatives to talk through, to explain to the UN the wonderful work that's been done here for decades in Brisbane. Initiatives like our bushland acquisition program, which has been protecting and preserving natural habitats for more than 30 years. Creating new parks and rehabilitating our creek banks and waterways.
Councillors, please.
Planting more trees than ever before, building new bikeways and footpaths. Landmark projects like Victoria Park, Hanlon Park, Oxley Creek transformation.
Councillors.
Cutting the cost of green waste recycling, creating community composting hubs. Educating households on how to lower their cost of living and how we're helping them through an $80 million cost of living package this financial year to help their hip pocket. I know those on the opposite side are moaning and groaning and not happy with this outcome. But unfortunately, you cannot ignore, when people are looking in with fresh eyes, how well Brisbane is doing in this space. We celebrate our diverse culture and provide opportunities for communities to be involved and connected. The list goes on, and we will continue to be more sustainable and create a better Brisbane through this project. Thank you to the UN for your recognition, and we look forward to what's next.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Further questions? Councillor Massey, how are you?
I'm great, thanks, Chair.
Welcome
Thank you.
back to the chamber.
How are you?
Good, thank
Chair,
you.
you
Good,
are?
thank you, yes.
Excellent stuff. Lord Mayor, after election promises, standing within this chamber again and again saying the Green Bridge project would be delivered, that you would spend up to $55 million. Today you announced the indefinite delay of the West End, Toowong and St Lucia and West End bridges. Will you now apologise to residents of West End, South Brisbane, Milton, St Lucia and Toowong for your broken promises?
Lord Mayor.
Thank you for the question through you, Mr Chair. Look, I would be interested to know through you, Mr Chair, whether Councillor Massey supports this project, because her predecessor raised some serious concerns about the project. Remember, he opposed the landing site because it was landing in a park.
That's right.
And he was against that. And so, look, I haven't heard anything from Councillor Massey on whether she supports the project or not, but I'd be interested to hear that. It seems... I don't look at your social media.
Sorry.
Seems that...
Deputy Mayor, just one moment. Councillors to my left, we're not going to do this anymore today. I will call you out. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And so, let's go back to the beginning. When I first became Lord Mayor, before the pandemic, before the flood, before the global inflation crisis, before the cost of living crisis, before the housing crisis, I promised that there would be a $550 million investment in green bridges over 10 years. I have not been the Lord Mayor for 10 years. And so we have 2 under construction right now. I'm absolutely excited about how they will transform our active transport network and provide new opportunities for people to leave their cars behind and travel more sustainably. The Breakfast Creek Green Bridge will be delivered first. That is coming quite close to completion. The Kangaroo Point Green Bridge, you're seeing major progress being made there. And also when it comes to Toowong to West End, we have moved to secure the landing site from the private owners that had that site. So it's quite clear that we plan to deliver this project, but we plan to deliver it when we can afford to deliver it. And I expect, if I am successful in returning as Lord Mayor, to deliver on that 10-year commitment. But it is a 10-year commitment. And so 2 bridges in the first term, with further bridges based on the $550 million that we have committed over 10 years.
Point of order.
Point of order, Councillor
The
Massey.
question was, would the Lord Mayor apologise to the residents for the broken promises? Yes or no?
You actually had a number of questions in your question. I believe the Lord Mayor has almost 2.5 minutes to answer them.
There have been no such promises. The promise, as I said, was $550 million over 10 years. And it was always predicated on support from other levels of government as well. Yes, it was. I don't know. I don't know who else was there.
Just one moment, Lord Mayor.
I don't know who else was there when I made that commitment, but I was certainly there.
Lord Mayor, resume your seat. Councillors, now that was ridiculous. Councillor Collier, Councillor Massey, we are not at kindergarten. We are at the Chamber of Council, Brisbane City Council. Show some professionalism, please. Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I, provided I'm given the opportunity to do so, plan on delivering a $550 million commitment over 10 years or sooner on green bridges, which is why that not only are we moving on the first 2, but why we have secured the landing site for the Toowong to West End Bridge. You don't actually buy the land unless you plan to build the bridge. So it's quite clear that we are serious about this when we can afford to do so. Now, look, I know Councillor Massey is probably supporting the Labor school of just keep spending, the magic pudding solution where it's someone else's money so they don't care about it, they'll just keep spending. People end up paying the bill for that. And we want to make sure that we keep costs down for residents. And so, yes, we are committed to $550 million of investment over 10 years in green bridges. We are also committed that the Toowong to West End Bridge will be the next cab off the rank. We've made that clear that in terms of the priority, Breakfast Creek will be finished first, Kangaroo Point, and then the third bridge in terms of priority will be Toowong to West End. And so we've made all these things clear. I restate those commitments today, and we are looking forward to making sure that we can keep rates down for residents but also deliver the infrastructure our growing city needs.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. That now ends question time. We'll move on
Point
to
of
the
order.
Point of order, Councillor Johnson.
Yes, Mr Chairman. I seek leave to move to suspend standing orders to move an urgency motion.
Seconded.
We have a motion before us to suspend standing orders, moved by Councillor Johnson and seconded by Councillor Massey. Councillor Johnson, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Today we've heard from the Lord Mayor in question time that there is only one way to ensure that costs in this city are brought under control. Yes. That is to do exactly what he says. Yes. And if you don't, then you don't support economic management. Yes. Now, that's obviously a very false statement, and it is unfortunate that the Lord Mayor has stood up and
Point
said...
of order, Mr Chair.
Point of order, Deputy Mayor.
I was wondering what the motion was before we heard the argument.
It's the motion is to suspend standing orders, but I think Councillor Johnson's working up to the reason why we're doing that. Councillor Johnson, you have 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
Yes, thank you. The Lord Mayor has given everyone an ultimatum here today. The only way to get costs under control is to do what he says. And if you don't, then you don't support getting costs under control. Now, that is not a good way to run the city. It's the Lord Mayor that's got us into this mess. And yes, he stands up in question time just a few minutes ago and says, if we don't do what he wants, it's our fault. Well, I don't think the Lord Mayor, the person who's got us into this mess, should be dictating to other councillors how to get us out of that mess. There are other ways. I don't support cuts into operational areas of council, and I think there are better ways to make sure that we can minimise cuts to operational areas. We need to immediately stop all overseas travel by council.
Sorry,
and council
just one moment.
officers.
Councillors, please. Councillor Johnson, can I remind you that this is the reason why we're suspending standing orders, not providing solutions?
Yes, well, that's what my motion's about.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. My motion is about providing solutions because the Lord Mayor's ultimatum simply says do it his way or you don't support good financial management. There is another way. There is a way you can consult, there is a way you can listen, and there is a way you can save money. Cut all overseas travel. Cut all paid advertising by this council. Cut all paid marketing by this council. Cut the external company board fees paid by this council to its LNP mates. There are dozens and dozens of them, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year going to people who sit on boards that are not accountable to the people of Brisbane, that don't need to be there. The Lord Mayor, there are other ways that we can save money, and that is by cutting things that are not necessary and preserving things that are. Cutting footpaths is not a good idea. Cutting tree trimming is not a good idea. Cutting community grants is not a good idea.
Councillor Johnson, your time has expired. It was a procedural motion, wasn't it? Sorry. We'll now put the motion. All those in favour of suspending standing orders, say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. The noes have it.
Division.
Division called by Councillor Johnson and Councillor Massey. Ayes to my right and noes to my left. Please ring the bells. You're right, mate. I was more worried about you. Yeah. They're making me thirsty. Clerks, please read the result.
Mr Chair, the noes have it, the voting being 7 in favour and 17 against.
Councillors, the motion to suspend standing orders has been lost. Please resume your seats. Lord Mayor, Establishment and Coordination Committee. Point of order, Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks very much, Chair. I move that the motion, buy buses from SEQ manufacturers, comes off the table.
Seconded.
Can you just bear with me one moment while we grab that paperwork? Okay. All right. We have a procedural motion before us to take the motion off the table regarding the bus manufacturing. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. The noes have it.
Division.
Division.
Division called by Councillor Cassidy and Councillor Collier. Ayes to my right and noes to my left. Please ring the bells. Glad you're on top of that, number 2. Clerks, please read the results.
Mr Chair, the noes have it, the voting being 7 in favour and 17 against.
Councillors, the procedural motion has been lost. Please resume your seats. Lord Mayor, Establishment and Coordination Committee recommendations.
Point of order, Chair.
Please. Point of order, Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks very much, Chair. I move that the motion laying on the table, Brisbane City Council notes its support for the Federal Government's Housing Australia Future Fund, come off the table.
We have a motion.
Seconded.
Sorry, Councillor Collier, I didn't mean to interrupt. We have a motion before us, a procedural motion to take the motion regarding the Federal Government's Housing Australia Future Fund come off the table. All those in favour say aye. Aye. All those against say no. No. The noes have it.
Division.
Division.
Division called by Councillor Collier and Councillor Cassidy. Ayes to my right, noes to my left. Please ring the bells. screw top. Clerks, please read the results.
Mr Chair, the noes have it, the voting being 7 in favour and 17 against.
Councillors, the procedural motion has been lost. Please resume your seats. Third time lucky. Lord Mayor, Establishment and
Point of order,
Coordination
Chair.
Committee report. Sorry, Councillor Collier, was that a point of order? Your point of order?
Thanks, Chair. I move that the motion currently lying on the table, that the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags fly on the Story Bridge, come off the table for debate.
Seconded.
We have a procedural motion before us to take the motion regarding the flags on top of Story Bridge come off the table. Sorry, Lord Mayor, we're going to have to wait to get back to you. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. The noes have it.
Division.
Division.
Division called by Councillor Cook and Councillor Cassidy. Ayes to my right, noes to my left. Sorry, Councillor Collier. My apologies, Councillor Collier. Thank you. Bit of quiet, please, councillors. Councillors. Bit of quiet while we read the results, please. Clerk, please read the results.
Mr Chair, the noes have it, the voting being 7 in favour and 17 against.
Councillors, the procedural motion has been lost. Lord Mayor, Establishment and Coordination Committee recommendations, please.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I move the report of the recommendations of the Establishment and Coordination Committee during the spring recess 2023 on matters usually considered by that committee be adopted.
Seconded.
It has been moved by the Lord Mayor and seconded by the Deputy Mayor that the report of the recommendations of the Establishment and Coordination Committee during the spring recess 2023 on matters usually considered by that committee be adopted. Lord Mayor.
Point of order.
Point of order, Councillor Johnson.
Yes, Mr Chairman, I'm seeking the further following information regarding item A, contracts and tendering for the Establishment and Coordination Committee report. Contract 7, which relates to flood rehabilitation sports field remediation program package 2. It's on page 3 of the ENC report. Could the Lord Mayor please provide a list of the projects that are being funded with the just over $2 million being allocated in this project? List of the projects and locations, please.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Before I begin, I just wanted to table the annual financial statements for the Brisbane Sustainability Agency, Brisbane Powerhouse, City Parklands and the Brisbane Economic Development Agency. Their financial reports and statements have been finalised during the recess and, as I always do, table them at the first available meeting back as we meet together. So I table those. Obviously, these organisations continue to do an incredible amount of work that contributes towards our city. Brisbane Sustainability Agency just recently announced an incredible initiative that they had initiated with the support of Councillor Tracy Davis, the Chair, and myself to target the planting of another 1 million plants and trees between now and the Olympics, and that's on top of the approximately 500,000 that we would have normally planted over that period of time. So we'll target 1.5 million plants and trees between now and the Brisbane 2032 Olympics. That's being done in partnership with Greening Australia. It's also been done in a responsible manner because the partnership with Greening Australia, deploys donations from both individuals and companies who want to support practical environmental outcomes. So you have major companies, am I allowed to mention some of them, Councillor Davis? Yeah? So major companies like Bupa, Amazon, are investing in the planting projects. They're helping by donating and putting funding towards, and they also, in these planting projects, get their staff involved as well, which is fantastic. So it's a wonderful initiative that not only takes the tree planting and tree cover and biodiversity across our city to the next level, sees creeks rehabilitated, but also uses corporate money, money from corporations, which I know the Greens absolutely hate with a passion. They see corporations as evil. And these corporations, they don't like corporate donations. These corporations are donating towards the environment, and it is a wonderful thing, and they should be commended for it. And so thank you to the Brisbane Sustainability Agency for bringing that together. The Brisbane Powerhouse continues to go from strength to strength in supporting the arts, and not only in Brisbane, but also to be an incredible arts precinct for the whole region. City Parklands provides amazing services in their major parklands that they manage of South Bank and Roma Street Parklands, and also Victoria Park, Barrambin. And the Brisbane Economic Development Agency continues to kick goals when it comes to championing local business and promoting Brisbane on the world stage for further investment, for further tourism opportunities and further international conferences and student investment as well, or international students coming here. So those 4 organisations are doing a fantastic job, and I thank all of them for their efforts over the last 12 months. I just wanted to touch on an incredibly devastating situation that we've all watched unfold in the last week or so. And that is the incredible and devastating conflict that has occurred in the Middle East, the incredible loss of life, and the devastation that we are seeing that is just unspeakable. It's been really concerning to see some people in our community, not many, but some people in our community, actively supporting terrorism, because that is exactly what they are doing if they support Hamas. They are supporting a terrorist organisation that kills innocents, that kills women and children and targets them deliberately. We should never support terrorist organisations. Never. There is no excuse for terrorism. There is no justification for terrorism. These people may see them as something other than that, but that is what they are. And in fact, the Australian government, on a bipartisan level, confirms that Hamas is a terrorist organisation. We must never support terrorism. Whether it is 9/11, we didn't support terrorism there. Whether it's the Bali bombings, we didn't support terrorism there. The Christchurch murders, we didn't support terrorism there. So many other examples of where we don't support terrorism, full stop, under any circumstances, and we don't support it in this situation as well. As I'm quite clear on saying that unequivocally. This is not about anything other than the question of whether you support terrorism or not. It is as simple as that, and we say no. We also say that the harmony of our community is absolutely critical, and I am proud that we are a community where people of all backgrounds get along, and I want to see that continue. I don't want to see conflicts in other parts of the world being brought here to our home that is peaceful and harmonious. And so we must stand together in not supporting terrorism. Last night, City Hall was lit up in red to support Dyslexia Awareness Month. This annual campaign raises awareness for those living with dyslexia, including supporting organisations that help patients increase their ability to read and write. Also last night, the Story Bridge, Radcliffe Place and Victoria Bridge were lit up in green to support Go Green for Eco-Marines. Eco-Marines educate the youth about how to protect and conserve our terrestrial, freshwater and marine ecosystems through informed action. Tonight, the Story Bridge, Victoria Bridge, Tropical Dome and Radcliffe Place will be lit up in blue to support National Carers Week. This week is celebrated annually and is an opportunity to recognise, celebrate and raise awareness among all Australians about the diversity of Australia's 2.65 million carers. The Carers Foundation does an incredible job and we support their work and thank them for what they've been doing. Tomorrow night, the Story Bridge and Victoria Bridge will be lit up in purple for International Mast Cell Diseases Awareness Day. This campaign raises awareness of the need for more accurate diagnostics, better treatment and more investment in research, as well as to build hope for mast cell disease patients. On Thursday night, all our assets will be lit up in blue and white for War Widows Day. This annual day supports Australia's war widows and is a way to provide support and resources to those widows who need it. On Friday, the Story Bridge, Victoria Bridge, Tropical this Tropical Dome display, Radcliffe Place, will be lit up in purple and yellow for International Development Language Disorder Awareness Day. This disease affects 7.6% of the global population, but it remains a hidden disability for many people around the world, and we're supporting them in bringing attention to it. On Saturday, City Hall will be lit up for the JCI National Convention being held here in City Hall. This is the Junior Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and we're pleased to support the work that they do in supporting young people getting into business, young entrepreneurs who will help create the businesses and the jobs of the future. Also on Saturday night, City Hall, Victoria Bridge and Radcliffe Place will be lit up in blue to support Mental Health and Awareness Month, organised by Beyond Blue. This campaign aims to raise vital funds for Beyond Blue support services. We also wanted to once again draw attention to the increasing preparedness that all levels of government have when it comes to dealing with bushfire preparedness, preparing for dry conditions, and that is something that we've been working very closely with the other agencies across the different levels of government on. I recently chaired a local disaster management committee meeting to make sure that we are as prepared as possible for what might lie, what might lie ahead when it comes to this coming summer season. And that was an important meeting because it helped to clarify the different responsibilities that each agency had during a bushfire event. And that was an important thing to do because we've obviously experienced many storms. We've experienced a number of floods as a city, but there has yet to be, in recent memory at least, a large-scale bushfire in Brisbane. And we obviously hope and pray that it stays that way, but we must be ready. And so clarifying the responsibilities, who is responsible for what part of the response when it comes to a bushfire, was an important step that was taken at that meeting, and that was good for all agencies that were involved. Everyone's been working well together. I think our level of preparedness...
Lord Mayor, your time has expired.
Move for an extension.
Seconded.
We have a motion before us moved, the Lord Mayor, for an extension for a further 10 minutes, moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Hutton. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Lord Mayor.
The level of preparedness across all three levels of government I think has been higher than it has been for many, many years, and everyone is working well together. We've seen, as I've mentioned in the past, ongoing works to prepare our own conservation reserves and make sure that our fire access trails are maintained and ready, that our controlled burning or hazard reduction program delivered as much as possible while the conditions were right, and also that we do ongoing investment when it comes to reducing the hazard. And some of that hazard reduction work includes the removal of weeds and vegetation in locations that may be close to roadsides or subject to potential risks of fires starting from cigarettes coming out of cars, for example, and other situations like that. And so we have, I think, a good level of preparedness, but obviously these are very challenging natural disasters that can move quickly, and we watch with great concern about the fires that are popping up around the country at this point in time. The state government and QFES, as the lead agency for most of the response, has assured us that they are ready. They also have aerial firebombing resources ready to go, and also the ability to get more aerial firebombing resources at a short notice if they need to. And so we'll continue working very closely with the other levels of government. Just to clarify, in terms of responsibilities, we obviously have a responsibility to maintain our own bushland reserves to manage the risk, something that we've been doing very carefully and very closely. But our major responsibility when it comes to a bushfire situation is to identify suitable locations for evacuation centres and to activate those evacuation centres based on consultation with the other agencies. When it comes to getting residents in and out of those areas that may be experiencing bushfires, it is something we will work with QFES and the police on. QFES will be at the front line with the control centre. They will be the immediate response and overarching agency when it comes to a bushfire. When it comes to evacuations, QFES will work closely with the Queensland Police to manage the appropriate routes in and out of bushfire locations, and that clarification was important. And then we will identify suitable sites for evacuation centres and activate those evacuation centres. Following the flood last year, we've identified a whole range of options for evacuation centres in different parts of the city. We've made early engagement with the operators of those facilities so that they can be activated at short notice, and we stand ready to work with other authorities. Obviously, we hope that Brisbane doesn't experience any serious bushfires over the coming months, but we stand ready to work with the agencies if that does occur. The other thing that we've been warned of as from the Bureau of Meteorology is that we are experiencing or going to experience some quite hot and dry months coming up. Now, when it comes to managing the potential risk of heat wave, that is something that is led by Queensland Health in the main. Once again, we clarified the responsibility. Queensland Health is the lead agency when it comes to managing heat wave, but we stand ready to work with Queensland Health when it comes to responding to that situation as well going forward. In relation to some commentary that we heard just before about how savings can be found in the budget. Now, we heard that there should be reductions in travel, in advertising, in consultancies, in catering, in things like that, and I can assure councillors all of those things will be reduced. All of them will be reduced. They will be, absolutely. So we're moving to make those reductions. But having said that, if you reduce them entirely, all of those things that were mentioned, you might get a couple of $1 million maximum of savings. Where is the other 397 or 98 million going to come from? And so this is the typical magic pudding approach that we see of opposition councillors. Oh, let's cut a newsletter. That'll do it. Well, no, it won't. Where is the other 399, 98 million going to come from once you've done that? These are also councillors who are always happy to send out newsletters with their own photo on, often multiple photos, sometimes 7 photos in one newsletter, yet they complain about others using similar methods of communication. And so Let's have some sensible contributions here. Let's not use simplistic box-ticking, point-scoring opportunities that actually won't deliver any real tangible benefits, but simply will be about making a political point. Let's have a discussion about how we can reduce expenses by 10% to keep the pressure off ratepayers. Now I know that Councillor Johnston, through you, Mr. Chair, said there was another way. I'd be really interested to hear what that other way is, because if you're not reducing expenditure, then ultimately someone has to pay the bill. And who is that? That is the ratepayers of Brisbane. It's very simple. There is no third option here. It's either reducing expenditure or it's upward pressure on rates. This is very basic stuff. And a newsletter or two is not going to cut the mustard. A list that was put forward before is not going to cut the mustard. It's not going to deliver the savings that are necessary to keep the pressure down on rates. Item A, before us, we have the contracts and tendering report. 21 out of the 22 contracts are being awarded to local suppliers, being 95% of contracts. Financial year to date, we have 77% of contracts so far being awarded to local contractors. And as usual, by the end of the financial year, we expect to have that well over 80% as per our target. Contracts ahead of us include, in this particular report, include the construction of the Beams Road upgrade, Stage 1A, which includes the signalisation of the Dorval Road intersection, road widening from Cowrie Road to Balcara Avenue, and the construction of a shared path and services upgrade from Lacey Road to Balcara Avenue. Also includes the construction of the Spring Hill Common and the Victoria Park pump track, both of which are currently underway. The upgrade of the Runcorn Pool, as well as construction of a new playground at Bedser Street in McGregor. In relation to the question that was asked before, sports field remediation works to address damage and installation of irrigation systems at the Eastern Suburbs Football Club at Heath Park, East Brisbane, are being done as part of this repair work. Item B is the Stores Board submission, the SCP for the provision of Cisco products, services and support and maintenance. This item is seeking Council approval to go to the market to source a supplier for Cisco services, a communication product which is used internally by Council operations. Cisco products are considered market leading in enabling a high performance network. Council's significant investment in Cisco means that non-Cisco equipment is not recommended due to the inability for other products to seamlessly connect to Council's network. The existing contract with Data3 was entered into in 2019 and is due to expire in June 2024. Stores Board has recommended that Council go to the market to secure a new provider for Cisco services, of which there are many different options throughout the country. Organisational Services, Transport for Brisbane and Brisbane Infrastructure are the primary users of these services, and new products are sourced on an as-need basis. The tender will be released to the market on the 1st of November, with the tender closing on the 1st of December, with the contract beginning mid-next year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks very much, Chair. I rise to speak on both of these items in this report and ask that item A be taken seriatim for voting, please. So each item seriatim for voting purposes.
Noted. Thank you.
Appreciate what the Lord Mayor said in his opening remarks about bushfire season and hazard reduction. Not sure if the Lord Mayor is aware, it's something that Councillor Strunk warned about some months ago about Council's preparedness. I'm not sure if the Lord Mayor is aware, but there hasn't been any hazard reduction work for the last month or two now, and none is planned before March next year. So we know that we're heading into a devastating fire season, and I certainly hope that that no hazard reduction burning decision by this administration wasn't made to save money, to cut costs as we head into what will be a catastrophic and devastating bushfire season ahead. And I'm not sure, maybe the Lord Mayor isn't aware of that. Maybe some cuts were made by others in Civic Cabinet Maybe Councillor Marks knows something about that. On contracts and tendering, this is perhaps one of the last times we'll see a document that's got so many things in it, isn't there? Given that the Lord Mayor is going to find $400 million in savings, and in the LNP's words, their own words, Civic Cabinet, and various members of Civic Cabinet have confirmed today that the $400 million to 30 June next year, or $1.6 million a day in cuts to projects and services, will all come from things that hadn't had a contract entered into yet. So we presume these ones, because they were made by Council's delegate previously, they are locked in, we presume. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe the Lord Mayor will still cut them in a budget review. But all of those things that the Lord Mayor listed in the budget just 3 months ago, that list of items that's in the Suburban Works program and listed in the budget pages at the back of the book, all of those things that required a contract to go into to deliver those things, whether they are road resurfacing, footpath reconstruction, tree planting, tree trimming, playground upgrades, drainage rehabilitation, just to name a few, they're all the sort of things that are going to be cut and they'll disappear from these documents before us today. $1.6 million a day, and the Lord Mayor has the gall to stand up here today and pretend as if it's our problem on this side of the chamber. We have been warning about this for months now, years, but this specific problem in August, which was only, not that long ago, was it? No. And it was just 6 weeks after the budget was handed down, looking at those financial documents that came through council, and the LNP laughed and laughed and laughed and said, there's nothing to see here, don't you worry about it. Well, it turns out that there were 400 million problems with the Lord Mayor's budget when he handed it down in June. He knew that these problems were coming because we've heard from council officers, Chair, that they have been spending weeks and weeks and weeks to date, looking at where these savings are going to be made. So the LNP knew all about this, Chair.
Councillor Cassidy, sorry, I've given you a fair bit of movement here, but I would like to draw you back to the report.
So contracts before us today, this report today, will be one of the last times that we see expenditure happening out in the suburbs of Brisbane. Mm-hmm. We know that according to the Lord Mayor and LNP chairs, contracts that are already entered into, major contracts like waste and the delivery of bus services, major contracts won't be included in this review. It'll just be small suburban projects and services out in the suburbs, which are what the purpose of these reports are before us today. So the only way we will know going forward what is cut, contrary to what the Lord Mayor claims, is by going through every single item that's in that Suburban Works program and seeing what is not delivered over the coming months. Because contrary to what the Lord Mayor says, there is no list coming to council. Budget reviews now, under the way in which this LNP administration accounts for expenditure and keeps it secret from the people of Brisbane, they do not detail what is being cut in a budget review. They detail a high-level figure, but they won't appear in these contracts and tendering reports.
Councillor Cassidy, this is not in the report, and I'd encourage you, if you do want to debate this, we can do that in general business, but can we go back to the items before us, please, in the papers?
So contract 5 here today...
Sorry, point of order.
Point of order, Councillor Johnson.
Mr Chairman, you've said this a number of times to me, and I think it's important that we clarify this. Mm-hmm. The meeting's local law requires councillors to be relevant to the matters under discussion. It does not say you have to speak about what is in the report. So I just want to clarify that you are not unreasonably restricting what the meeting's local law says, which entitles councillors to speak more broadly than what is in the report.
Councillor Johnson, I really don't uphold your point of order, but I will pass a comment. I did start off by addressing Councillor Cassidy and saying I had given him a broad brush to deal with, and I was drawing him back to the report. Thank you for your interjection. but I do believe that Councillor Cassidy is going a little bit further than what the papers show before us. But more than happy for Councillor Cassidy to speak in general business. More than happy, and I'd encourage it. Councillor Cassidy.
Thanks very much, Chair.
Point of order, sorry, Councillor Cassidy. Mr Chairman, it's your language and instruction to us that I am raising as the problem here. When you say to us you can only talk about what's in the report, that is not what the meeting's local law actually says. That is where it is problematic, because you have taken action against me previously. The rule is you have to be relevant to. So, Mr Chairman, this is important because you have all the power here, but you are saying things that are not in the meeting's local law.
How about I make a deal with you? How about if I reflect over this over the afternoon break, and I'll get back to you after that. In the meantime, can we hear what Councillor Cassidy has to say?
Mr Chairman, I don't want to do deals. That's not what's in the meeting's local law.
I'm not offering a deal, Councillor.
I'm seeking a ruling from you as the chairperson of council.
I will reflect on what you've asked me, and then I will get back to you after afternoon break. But you're really chewing into Councillor Cassidy's time here. Councillor Cassidy.
The clock stopped, but thank you very much, Chair. So we look at these contracts that are before us today, which are for part of projects. We know that the contract one, for instance, the Story Bridge Depot Works elevated floor and office space one. So that's a single contract for a larger project, which is critical work that needs to be done in an ongoing way. How do we know that the LNP aren't going to cut the Story Bridge rehabilitation works? We don't know that, and we won't know that because the LNP just simply won't do it. That won't be included in the phantom list that the Lord Mayor says is going to come in a budget review. That's one example. Contract 5, the Beams Road upgrade. And Lord Mayor talked about this contract that's here, but he didn't talk about the cuts to stage 3 of that project. Now, when the LNP cut stage 3 of that project in the last session, the Lord Mayor said really clearly that this initial contract would be entered into and then stage 3 would be done next. Well, there's not only is there no guarantee of that, there's almost a guarantee now, based on what the LNP administration are doing, is that project is going to disappear altogether. That one is going to form part of the $400 million in cuts to suburban projects that this LNP administration are going to oversee. And the list goes on and on and on. More of that flood rehabilitation works and sports field remediation work that is required, not just the result of the 2022 flood disaster, but also ongoing work. There's absolutely no guarantee anymore that that program is going to continue to roll on. You know, I was down at the Brighton Roosters over the weekend, and their field has been absolutely hammered over the season because they have record numbers of players. They're turning away girls and young women because there are no female change facilities at this location. According to the LNP, there's no problem in that space, and apparently they're funding them all over the city. Well, bad luck if you're a community sporting club, because they're about to be cut. That's the reality we're living under now with this LNP administration. We're paying more and we're getting less. You look at some of these sports field rehabilitations. There's one at Mitchelton and one at Capera that are listed here today. So this is now what are we beyond the February 2022? More than 18 months beyond the February 2022 flood disaster, and we're only just now seeing contracts entered into for flood rehabilitation sports field works. And it's no wonder that some of those ones, the last ones to be done, are in the inaugural ward, represented by Councillor Wines. We all remember that he deserted his inundated ward. We all remember that Courier Mail story where he flew off to Dubai in the middle of that flood disaster. He didn't seem to know where his ward was in the middle of that. Couldn't locate his ward during that flood disaster. Well, he hasn't been able to locate his ward as a local councillor to make sure that his clubs get their projects done on time and on budget as well. A whole lot of disappointment that's in this, but it just pales into almost into insignificance now, because we're faced with these $400 million worth of cuts to communities right around Brisbane, $1.6 million a day. And when you look at a project, as the Lord Mayor said, what would you cut? Well, we know he likes the big glitzy inner city stuff. We know that his metro is $1 billion over budget. We know that the inner city green bridges are hundreds of millions of dollars over budget now. The Victoria Park project is $83 million over budget already so far to date. And I might need correcting because that was as at the budget. Yeah. That was as at the budget. Who knows? Who knows the size of the... Well, it's not. I'll take that injection. It really wasn't a budget, was it? It was more of a sort of a cost estimate, a guesstimate, maybe. If you're changing it by $400 million a quarter, it's not really much of a budget. But you look at the contracts before us today, and this inner city park is costing $140 million as at the budget last year. And in efforts to find savings, you think maybe to prioritise suburban park upgrades, or to fund road resurfacing, or to fund community club upgrades, you'd find savings in a project like at Victoria Park. But instead, what we have here is $6 million being spent on a BMX track at Victoria Park, which is very much a nice thing to have, but not really essential.
Councillor Cassidy, your time has expired.
Point of order, Chair.
Point of order, Councillor Collier.
Move for an extension.
Seconded.
We have an extension for Councillor Cassidy, moved by Councillor Collier and seconded by Councillor Whitney. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Councillor Cassidy, you've got the call.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. So instead of prioritising the delivery of drainage projects or road resurfacing, as I said, or working with community housing providers to address the housing crisis, or to tackle the congestion crisis that's engulfing our city, instead of doing those things, they're all going to be cut and delayed. But don't worry, that BMX track at Victoria Park is going to be built. I mean, really, what are the priorities? We heard that, funny story Councillor Cunningham made up about bumping into someone saying that they're so hard up that they can't go on date night. Well, there are plenty of families out there so hard up that they can't afford to put food on their table or pay their rent. And for them to hear that the priorities of this LNP administration, instead of investing in their communities, is to spend $6 million building a BMX track in Victoria Park, that says volumes. That speaks volumes about the priorities of this administration. So there's a park there. There's a park here, actually, a $900,000 playground upgrade out of McGregor. I'm sure it's a big one, an impressive one, great investment out of McGregor. You could build another 5 or 6 of them instead of the BMX track in Victoria Park. An investment right around Brisbane rather than concentrating that in one location in the inner city. But we know that the Lord Mayor is obsessed with those inner city projects, that he gets to advertise, that he gets to put a newsletter out about, that he gets to call a media conference and announce and re-announce and re-announce and re-announce all those inner city projects. He's not interested in the small things in the suburbs that make real differences in real people's lives. And as you look through these documents as well, and you reflect on the $400 million in cuts that the Lord Mayor is making to communities this year alone, $1.6 million a day in cuts, you rack your brain, Chair, don't you, and you think, God, let's just, all these delays and cost blowouts, let's just think about things that the Lord Mayor's actually delivered in his time. Hasn't delivered any of those green bridges that he's promised. He hasn't delivered the metro that he's promised. That's about it. Yeah. Oh, the roundabout. Yeah, that's delayed. Massive cost blowouts on that. Yeah. Hasn't really delivered much. Just cuts and chaos over there in the LNP. They're all the same, aren't they, Chair? And it's coming home to roost for them. I think when communities around Brisbane start to quantify what $1.6 million a day in cuts to projects and services mean for them in their neighbourhoods, I think the LNP are going to feel it in March next year pretty badly. Clause B on this one is the Stores Board submission for the Cisco product services support and maintenance. We do support this because it's a different approach and a positive approach, unlike what the LNP do mostly in actually putting this out to the market and testing that. rather than just continuing to stay with the one provider. It may be the case that Data 3, the existing provider, continues to be that, but it is good practice where you can't provide these things in-house that you do get the best outcome for ratepayers. So we welcome this approach, and we think this is something that should be taken more often. And just in closing here on this item before us today, I did just want to make a very brief comment, put on record our solidarity after the weekend with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It's been a really, really tough couple of months as a people to be talked about so intensely for that time, and that outcome on the weekend is pause for reflection, but particularly for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community here in Brisbane, a really, really tough time this week. And I make the commitment to stand alongside them, and as do my Labor colleagues, in their fight for justice in the future.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Councillor Johnson? Your microphone, please, Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you. I just thought the whip on the other side might want to move the afternoon tea motion, but that's fine. I'm happy to let the hard work of all the clerks go to waste outside. I rise to speak, she's got one job. I rise to speak on items A and items B, and I just want to start by saying that the...
Point of order, Chair.
Point of order, Councillor Whitman.
Yeah, you've mentioned multiple times today that everyone's going to be heard in silence, and Councillor Mackay and Councillor Adams are just having conversations while Councillor Johnson's trying to speak.
I did note that, Councillor Whitney, but it's the first time they've done that. I've given everybody else plenty of slack during this meeting. They're building up to that. So we'll hear Councillor Johnson now speak, won't we, without interrupting Councillor Johnson, correct? Councillor Whitney? Yes, thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Look, I'm not too worried. It used to be a robust political chamber. Apparently like it's a hospital ward now or something. Anyway, the contracts and tendering. Look, the contracts and tendering that are before us today in item A are the best indication of what's going wrong with this council administration. The Lord Mayor will stand up and say, if you don't support what we say you should support, then you support higher rates. Now, he's done that multiple times today. That's just fundamentally and ridiculously untrue. If the Lord Mayor knew there was a problem with the budget at any point over the last few weeks, he could have come to councillors and said, councillors, I want to have a discussion with you about how the contracts that we've got to enter into can be delivered. That would have been a good way to do it, right? But no, he didn't do that. In fact, yesterday he announced, that there's going to be $400 million cut out of the council budget he announced just over 3 months ago. And today he brings in all of these contracts which were let months ago, which presumably are part of the problem. So was there any review done of any of these projects to ensure that they are value for money? Was there any review of these projects done to ensure that any additional embellishments that will be in here are actually whittled back so that it is just core services being delivered? I mean, you can't just stand up and say, in fact, he didn't actually do this, so I'm not quoting the Lord Mayor here, but you can't just stand up and say, well, the budget stuff, therefore I'm going to cut everything, and it's not our fault because it's your fault, and it doesn't make sense. This administration, the finance chair, the Lord Mayor, the deputy mayor, all the other chairs, week after week sit through Civic Cabinet, they approve projects like this, and yet they claim that they have no responsibility for the financial management of this council. The reason this council is in a diabolical position is because this leadership team cannot properly scope and deliver projects. And I've said it for years that that's the problem, and clearly it is. And we see today, of course, these projects will roll through. There's now contracts for them, and they mainly appear to be in LNP wards, with the odd Labor contract contract thrown in as well. But, you know, some places aren't missing out. Victoria Park, there's multiple millions of dollars for Victoria Park. I mean, why can't we have a $1 million bump track, not a $6 million bump track in Victoria Park? Is the world going to end if the bump track isn't $6 million? I mean, this is what I mean by properly scoping projects. I'm sure City Projects did a great job going, yeah, we'll make it bigger than Ben-Hur and we'll turn it into, you know, the biggest thing you've ever seen, and, you know, it'll end up the size of a roller coaster at Disneyland. Yeah. But could the council afford it? No. Clearly not. And the Lord Mayor knew this. Apparently he's known for some time. But instead, this administration pushed forward with those projects, reckless expenditure, knowing that the budget position was perilous. No discussion with us, no discussion with, you know, our community. In fact, the Lord Mayor's been out, you know, spruiking. I mean, he spruiked so strongly, shade over the Victoria Bridge, and that's just gone. That's cut. You know, I am very concerned about how this council is running. It's running badly because there is very poor leadership. There's been too much delegation of council responsibilities to unrepresentative and untransparent decision makers within council. There's been profligate financial expenditure without common sense being applied. And this LNP administration has pork-barrelled their own areas when there should have been some more rigorous financial application of good judgment by the Finance Chair and the Lord Mayor, if not the portfolio chairs. Because we are in this situation and these projects are all at risk because this administration cannot manage money. They cannot manage projects and it's only going to get worse. The last council meeting we had 6 weeks ago, the Lord Mayor came in and asked for millions and millions of dollars in cost overruns for 2 projects, the Moggle Road Roundabout and Kangaroo Point Bridge. And a few weeks later, he's in here saying, oh, no, we haven't got any money. We've got to cut footpath expenditure or tree trimming or waste collection or whatever it might be. And we won't know. So this is the problem. This administration are letting council officers run projects without proper scrutiny and oversight, without rigorous investigation to determine if there is value for money, if the scope of the project is appropriate, and if Brisbane City Council can afford to deliver it, and in fact, if the market has the capacity to deliver it. These are not unknown problems. It's 2023. These have been problems for 3 years. And yet this LNP administration still doesn't know what to do about it. They're just going bigger and bigger and bigger every time. A $6 million bump track in the current climate the Lord Mayor's come in here and talked about is ridiculous expenditure. Yes. You know, then we're going on to talk about Cisco phones, and that's secret. So one of the first things this council should be doing is publishing the amount of money it's spending on things. Because they hide it and it's secret, they think it's not real money. It's not real money. We're not allowed to talk about the amount of money that council wants to spend on the new phone systems because it's redacted, it's secret. This administration needs to, well, they need to go. There is no question about that. They are post their ability to deliver even the basics. You know, out my way, it takes now almost 2 years to get a footpath fixed. I've got a footpath from it 18 months ago almost now in Graceville that they said it'd be a year and they'd do repairs, and now it's another year before it'll actually be fully properly fixed. But it's okay because the Lord Mayor is going to allow all that overseas expenditure to continue, and we saw the LNP over the break ticking off on all those junkets overseas. It's not good enough. The reason we're in this mess is because of the Lord Mayor and this LNP administration.
Okay, Councillor Hutton.
Point of order, Chair.
Point of order.
Chair, I move that council now adjourn for afternoon tea for a period of 15 minutes, which only commences when councillors have vacated the chambers and the doors have been locked.
Seconded.
We have a motion for afternoon tea moved by Councillor Hutton and seconded by Councillor Mackay. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Thank you, councillors. See you after afternoon tea. Councillors, are there any further speakers? Councillor Cunningham.
Thanks, Mr Chair. I rise just very briefly to speak on item B. So this item seeks approval to establish a preferred supplier arrangement for Cisco products, services, support and maintenance across Brisbane City Council. Council installs and maintains Cisco networking equipment within Council's corporate data communication network to provide a reliable and secure networking environment right across all areas of our council. Council has made a significant investment in Cisco networking equipment over the years, which then allows additional functionality such as reporting and self-diagnosis right across that network. Introducing non-Cisco equipment, therefore, Mr Chair, would not be recommended as it would result in the loss of that functionality, as well as introduce significant operational challenges for officers. Cisco products are considered market leading in enabling a reliable and secure network across all our sites, Mr Chair. Equipment is purchased by divisions across council and are currently procured on an as and when required basis through a schedule of rates, with that pricing based off a discount from Cisco's recommended retail price. The arrangement will be for an initial term of 3 years, with options to extend for additional periods of up to 2 years, for a total maximum period of 5 years, Mr Chair, and I commend this item to the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Are there any further speakers on the E&C Committee report? Councillor Huang.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I rise to speak on item A of the E&C report on contracts and tendering with reference to Bester Street Park construction. Mr Chair, the Sri Lanka Council is committed to creating more to see and do in a clean and green city by creating new local parks like Bester Street Park in McGregor. As McGregor and the surrounding areas continues to grow, it is important to ensure that new parks are created to meet the recreational needs of residents, especially those in the suburbs. The project is part of Sri Lanka Council's commitment to enhance and maintain more than 2,160 parks across our city. To support residential growth in McGregor in response to findings in the Mangrove Corridor neighbourhood plan, a new park is planned in Bester Street. The new park will provide the growing residential community with a much-needed green space, shady spots to have lunch and enjoy the outdoors, as well as areas for recreational and community activities. Bester Street Park will contribute towards Council's commitment to creating new lifestyle and leisure opportunities by enhancing the park network to respond to a growing and changing Brisbane. The creation of the local recreation park is just one of many ways Sri Lanka Council is growing our Brisbane lifestyle. And community consultations was undertaken from 18th October to 8th November back in 2021 to help develop the draft concept plan. And further consultation on the draft concept plan was undertaken from 11th of April to 2nd of May last year to inform the final concept plan. We would like to thank the community for taking the time to provide feedback on features of the park during the consultation phases of this project. These new park features will include things like exercise equipment, imaginative and informal play area, kick-around space, picnic shelter, bubbler, pedestrian pathways, bin enclosures, and sittings. I've been to every opportunity. I have took every opportunity to attend the community consultation to hear the views of the community, and I'm glad the contract for construction has been awarded. I would like to close by thanking Lord Mayor and Councillor Davis for delivering this beautiful new park for McGregor, and I look forward to the opening and seeing how local residents enjoy the newest park in our community.
Further speakers? Seeing no one rising. Lord Mayor, summing up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to provide an update because there was a question raised about fire management and hazard reduction. I think it was Councillor Cassidy who raised that issue and claimed that there hadn't been any controlled burning done in recent weeks. And yes, that is correct, because the fire hazard is actually too high right now. And so, like mosquito control, we do rely on the advice of experts on when to burn. And we burn in winter conditions, we burn when there's low wind, we burn under some very specific conditions, and we certainly don't burn when the fire risk is high, like it is now. That would be irresponsible, and the chance of getting out of control would be very high. But what I can say is that the number of hectares treated with controlled burning, which is currently 342 hectares, is the highest in at least 5 years. I've asked for figures beyond 5 years as well, just to have a look at what's occurred further back. But certainly in the time that I've been Lord Mayor, there's never been more area covered with a controlled burning and fire management than we're doing this year. But that's not it. There is also 3,158 hectares of fire break treatment through grass cutting in fire breaks to keep them low. There's been fire block preparation works of 805 hectares completed. There's been vegetation works of 1,959 hectares completed, and there's been fire track and trail maintenance completed across 161 kilometres of fire access trails as well. So we've been working really hard to try and make sure that we are as prepared as possible. And so that any suggestion that somehow there's been a budgetary constraint on fire preparedness is just plain wrong. The only reason that we stopped the controlled burning program is because the fire hazard rose and the weather conditions have not been suitable for controlled burning. Because if you don't burn at the right time, controlled burning becomes uncontrolled burning. And we certainly don't want to be the ones starting fires that get out of control. So we'll continue managing that process and doing the best we can, working with other agencies. I think, as I said earlier, that all three levels of government are well prepared, but we certainly hope that it doesn't eventuate as I think all of us across party lines would also hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We'll now put item A of the report. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Division.
Division.
Division called by Councillor Cassidy and Councillor Collier. Ayes to my right and noes to my left, please. Please ring the bells. We're missing Councillor Johnson and Councillor Massey. Everyone else is here. Yep. 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 Clerks, councillors, quiet, please. Clerks, please read the result.
Mr. Chair, the ayes have it, the voting being 15 in favour and 5 abstentions.
Councillors, the motion for item A has passed. We'll now put item B of the report. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Right. Before we move on to the next Establishment Coordination Committee decisions, I'd like to just make a few comments on Councillor Johnson's questions in the previous report. With respect to the verbal reprimand, I do acknowledge that I was a little quick to reprimand Councillor Johnson. However, I would ask that each councillor, when you are rising to speak to the chair, please start with point of order first and then state what the point of order is about. That is paramount. And item 2, with respect to Councillor Johnson's question around relevance of the report, as per the meeting's local law, that relevance is determined by the chair and that ruling. Lord Mayor, Establishment and Coordination Committee decisions, please.
Mr Chair, I move the report setting out the decisions of the Establishment and Coordination Committee as Delegate of Council during the Spring Recess 2023 on matters usually considered by that committee be noted.
Seconded.
It has been moved by the Lord Mayor and seconded by the Deputy Mayor that the report setting out the decisions of the Establishment and Coordination Committee as Delegate of the Council during the Spring Recess 2023 on matters usually considered by that committee be noted. Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Item A is the settlement agreement for compensation arising from Council's resumption of land situated at 110 Shelley Road, Colo, for environmental purposes. When Council aims to secure properties through the bushland acquisition process, our going-in position is always through negotiation. With regards to 110 Shelley Road and Colo, Council was not able to reach an agreement with the former owners of the property. This was, I understand, not an owner-occupier property, and so in some circumstances like this, where the bushland is important, there are no owner-occupiers living on the site, we then move to a compulsory resumption process. It doesn't happen very often, but occasionally it does. Usually the owners are happy to sell and reach a good outcome, but in some cases it goes effectively to a dispute resolution process, as did this one. So Council acquired the property and it was transferred into Council ownership in November 2018. So this matter has been ongoing for quite some time. We've now reached a resolution. As I said, the property was vacant at the time, so no one was kicked out of their home. It was a vacant property, and they're the sort of circumstances where we might move for an acquisition through a resumption. But the site is a huge site, just short of 160 hectares, which is just massive, including endangered regional ecosystems, which are now managed by Council as part of the Shelley Road Park. Shelley Road Park has been progressively acquired by Council to establish a major bushland reserve with 8 different parcels now acquired, and progressively we've moved through and acquired those different parcels. Not only do these parcels contain inherent biodiversity and nature-based recreation values, they've provided an extensive range of opportunities for Council to deliver offset and restoration activities for koalas. Parcel is a significant wildlife corridor linking the Diagla National Park with the Brisbane River and Ipswich's Sapling Pocket Reserve, with more than 2 kilometres of Brisbane River frontage containing platypus habitat, recorded sightings of platypus in this stretch of the river, and so, you know, an incredibly important parcel of land linking in with surrounding important parcels of land. In accordance with the Acquisition of Land Act 1967, the owners are entitled to claim compensation from Council for the acquisition of the land. In November 2021, the former owners submitted a claim for compensation and requested an advance payment be made. The Act requires that the requested advance payment be paid within 90 days after the date the request is made, and this was paid by Council at the time based on the advice from our independent valuer. And so what usually happens is Council engages a valuer, the owner of the property engages their own valuer. There is usually a gap between the two, but what we would normally do is where an advance is paid, we pay up to the value of our valuation. So we've got our own valuation, we justify that's the value of the land that we think it is, we pay that valuation as an advance, and then we go into negotiation over any remaining compensation that might be payable. So that's a fair process, and it means that the property owners get their money sooner. They get the vast majority of it up front as an advance, and then they negotiate about the remainder, if any, of compensation. So we've since been in negotiations concerning the outstanding compensation amount. The agreed settlement amount appears in the papers today. Ultimately, this purchase continues to directly benefit the City of Brisbane as we pursue our goal of 40% natural habitat cover by 2031. I commend this item to the Chamber.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Are there any further speakers on item A? No? Right. I will now put the report.
Mr Chair.
Oh.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Davis, my apologies.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and I rise to speak on item A, which is the settlement of compensation for 110 Shelley Road, Colo, and as the Lord Mayor says, this finalises a compulsory acquisition process for the land at Shelley Road, in which Council acquired 159 hectares of bushland estate that now forms part of the Shelley Road Park. And as the Lord Mayor indicated, we're absolutely passionate about protecting and expanding Brisbane's significant natural estate, and the bushland acquisition program is key to achieving that outcome. We always aim to secure properties through this program voluntarily, as we have done recently in Rachel Street at Maruka. However, sometimes there are circumstances where we will move towards a compulsory acquisition through a negotiation process. And on balance, Mr Chair, this acquisition was certainly worth it. To put the figure of this acquisition in perspective, it represents about double the amount of bushland that we would ordinarily acquire through our annual bushland acquisition program for a similar figure. This is a significant addition to our natural estate, and the process to acquire under the Acquisition of Land Act has been followed to the letter here. The property was vacant at the time of acquisition and is largely protected estate. The land had actually been used for cattle grazing and was registered on the state's Environmental Management Register at the time that Council acquired it, and since then it's come a long way. Shelley Road Park has been progressively acquired by Council to establish a bushland reserve with 8 parcels acquired, including this property at 110 Shelley Road, and in total it's now a 220 hectare natural reserve. The reserve is part of a significant wildlife corridor linking the Diagolo National Park that the Lord Mayor spoke about to the Brisbane River and Ipswich's Sapling Pocket Reserve, with more than 2 kilometres of the river frontage which contain platypus habitat, with recorded sightings of platypus. The removal and remediation of the previous agriculture use has secured and preserved this habitat for the future and is home now to a huge diversity of wildlife. The land has provided an extensive range of opportunities for Council to deliver offset and restoration activities, including establishing a new koala habitat. Although koalas were originally found to be absent from the site, ongoing restoration works have seen them return to the reserve, which is very exciting. Mr Chair, I'm told that it's also a popular spot for Brisbane bird watchers as well. You can find a menagerie of colourful species like peaceful doves, brown honeyeaters, scarlets and red-backed fairy wren nesting in it and around the newly restored forest. Acquiring this parcel has enabled us to make important progress in delivering a range of environmental offset plantings, which has seen a significant amount of former agricultural land now around Colo transformed into rich and vibrant habitat. So in total, Mr Chair, over 4,400 hectares of land has now been preserved through the bushland acquisition program since 1990, including Brisbane's most significant koala habitat areas. It's a program started by a Liberal administration, and it's a legacy we are very proud of, and I commend this item to the Chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Any further speakers? See no one rising. Lord Mayor, right or reply? No? We will now put the report. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Division. Seconded.
Division called by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Hutton. Ayes to my right and noes to my left. Clerks, please ring the bells. Clerks, please read the results.
Mr Chair, the ayes have it, the voting being 22 in favour.
The motion has passed for the report. Councillors, could you please resume your seats? Councillor Murphy, Transport Committee decisions, please.
Thanks, Chair. I move that the report of the Transport Committee meeting held during the spring recess be adopted.
Seconded.
It has been moved by Councillor Murphy and seconded by Councillor Hutton, thank you, that the report setting out the decisions of the Establishment and Coordination Committee as Delegate of Council during the spring recess on matters usually considered by the Transport Committee be noted. Councillor Murphy.
Thanks, Chair. During the recess, E&C considered a number of petitions. They're here for consideration. So the first one is a petition with 163 signatures requesting Council to wrap some of our city cats in the Bluey theme, naming them city dogs. Of course, Bluey is one of Brisbane's most famous exports, and our city cats are among the city's most iconic attractions. And so, in spite of all the cliches about cats and dogs, Chair, we're very excited to see if we could make this Brisbane crossover a reality. Unfortunately, the idea has proven somewhat difficult to execute, as the rights for Bluey are owned by the BBC, and so we need an agreement with the BBC to use the Bluey brand. As the petition response notes, Council and BBC representatives have met on a number of occasions in the past year to discuss depiction of Bluey characters on some of our city cat fleet. These discussions continue to be ongoing. We've not yet reached an agreement with BBC, so we're unable to fulfil the petitioner's request at this time. But I would simply say to all the Bluey fans out there, stay tuned. We are continuing to work on it. E&C also considered 3 petitions relating to active transport network infrastructure over the recess that aim to improve or build new paths for our city. Items B, C and D. Item B requested Council install improved infrastructure for cyclists along King Arthur Terrace in Yurongpilly and Graceville Avenue in Graceville, and that was supported by 585 signatures. This infrastructure is in the form of physically separated bike lanes on King Arthur Terrace, spanning from Fairfield Road to the intersection of Graceville Avenue and Nadine Street. It also included several requests to widen shared paths and to introduce a protected shared zone along King Arthur Terrace between Godiva Avenue and Softstone Street. The petition response notes that several requests have been supported by Council, either through being capital listed for the future or funded through the Cycle Network Local Government Grants, the CNLGG program, a state government grants funding program. Requests like the dedicated on-road bicycle lane along Yurongpilly Green Precinct and the widening of the shared path between Pamphlet Street and Nadine Street will all be capital listed. And a two-directional or bidirectional protected bikeway on the northern side of King Arthur Terrace between Softstone Street and Pamphlet Bridge will be investigated subject to CNLGG funding. Chair, item C received 31 signatures, and this requested Council upgrade active transport connectivity to existing bridges connecting Gould Road to Granville Street and Butterfield Street to Downey Street. The petitioners originally requested to use the funding that was allocated to the Enoggera Creek Sport and Recreation Draft Precinct Plan to upgrade the listed bridges. Unfortunately, funding for this project was redirected after the February 2022 floods. And as the petition response notes, Council acknowledges that the existing bridges would benefit from a number of improvements and will all be capital listed in the future, prioritised against other projects across the city. Improvements to the paths and intersections that connect these bridges will also be considered as part of future upgrades. Item D, requesting Council extend Terminal Drive protected cycleway along Lamington Avenue and consult with Ascot residents on active travel infrastructure, received 147 signatures. Currently, there is a cycleway that runs along Lamington Avenue and ends just after the road crosses under Southern Cross Way. Petitioners requested that Council remove on-street parking in Lamington Avenue to create a two-way separated cycleway. And I'm happy to say that Council supports the installation of a two-way separated cycleway and further improvements to cycling infrastructure along Lamington Avenue. This project has been listed for future investigation and design works pending funding in the future. The petition response noted that cyclists are currently not permitted to use the footpath on the southern side of Lamington Avenue due to signage advising cyclists to dismount and join the road. Council will remove the sign, which will enable cyclists to continue along the footpath legally should they choose. This effectively extends off-road access all the way to Nudgee Road, although along a smaller footpath, which will be addressed in the future. And I'm grateful to the Councillor for Hamilton, Councillor Dixon, for supporting the recommendation. I believe that's a pretty good interim solution, and I'll leave further debate to the Chamber. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Cassidy, you've got the call.
Thanks very much, Chair. I rise to speak on these items before us today, and particularly the petitions requesting cycling infrastructure. Interesting to hear Councillor Murphy say today that these have been listed in the capital budget, because we know that doesn't exist. We know from his admission a couple of months ago that there is no list of bikeway projects that this LNP administration is working to. He admitted that in the committee meeting. He said that any future projects are all contingent on election commitments. There is no list that the LNP are working on in terms of costing them and getting feasibility for them and funding them through a budget process. That was before we found out that there were going to be $400 million worth of cuts to bikeway projects and road resurfacing, on-road bikeway projects. They'll all be included in that $1.6 million a day cut to projects and services in the suburbs of Brisbane. So we know from the petition response that council officers have said these projects the petitioners have identified are good ones and they warrant investment. But we also know from Councillor Murphy that there is no mechanism for these to be listed in any meaningful way. Even when we've called for that information, we've been told that doesn't exist. So I don't believe what Councillor Murphy has just said, and that's giving some false hope to these people who have petitioned, who will get a response that says they've been listed awaiting funding, but that apparently doesn't exist. So you can't say that it does and it doesn't, and then think that you can just get away with that. So we know that from a couple of months ago that the LNP have no plans for the future. They're just going to cobble together some election commitments, or so we're told by Councillor Murphy, in the lead up to the next election. We know that the Kangaroo Point Bridge and the Breakfast Creek Bikeway extension was the sum total of this Lord Mayor's investment in cycling infrastructure, apart from a little bit here and a little bit there, which have all been cut over the last 2 or 3 years. North Brisbane Bikeway is the big one of those, which was deferred and I suspect will be entirely cut now in this $1.6 million a day cut to suburban projects. So we support the petitioners in wanting to address the crippling congestion that Brisbane now faces through an investment in suburban cycling infrastructure. And we often hear this rhetoric from Councillor Murphy and from the LNP, and it is just rhetoric because their actions don't back up their words, that you need to invest in public transport and active transport to break the back of congestion in Brisbane. But when we have communities coming to council requesting that they upgrade active transport connectivity in the suburbs, and council says, yes, this project should proceed, but there is no money. There's no money today, and there'll be no money in the future under this LNP administration, because they are cutting $1.6 million a day from suburban services and projects. There's a $400 million black hole after 20 years of this LNP administration. So these residents are going to find out that they've been paying more and getting less under this LNP administration, and much, much less. So not only will they see these projects not funded by the LNP, but they're going to see all of the other projects that the LNP talked about just 3 months ago when the budget was released being cut and deferred and delayed and put into the never never as well. So we're not going to support the responses to these petitions today, because they do not meet the expectations and the needs of the community, and that's what we're all here for. We're all here to represent our communities. We're not all here to stand in lockstep behind the Lord Mayor when he demands we vote a particular way. I know 19 councillors do that, and there'll be a lot less than 19 after the next election, because it'll come home to roost. Communities don't want that. They don't want their councillor going in and towing this Lord Mayor's line. They want councillors to go in and fight for their communities, and that's what Labor will continue to do.
Thank you, councillor. Further speakers? Councillor Johnson.
Yes, I rise briefly to speak on item B, the petition regarding infrastructure for cyclists along King Arthur Terrace, Yurongpilly and Graceville Avenue, Graceville. I'm aware of the petition that has been put forward by cycling groups, and note that there was strong support for the petition, which came from pretty much all over Brisbane, not necessarily the local area. And normally what council does is say how many residents in that street or that suburb have signed the petition, and I note that they've not done that in this case, and that is because I don't think anybody who lives on this street actually agreed to sign the petition. So it wasn't generated out of a place of local interest, taking into account local conditions. I am very supportive of additional bike lanes. However, the big problem with this petition response before us today is it doesn't address the issues that the community wants to see improved to make it safer for everyone, cars, cyclists and pedestrians. And this actually says that I did not support the petition response, and that's actually not quite right. I'd like to read into the record what I did say. It's a very long and complex issue, so I've been giving it some thought, and I think most people can see that from the actual petition response. I've asked for numerous improvements along King Arthur Terrace for many years, including a speed reduction to 50 kilometres and resurfacing between Softstone Street and the Pamphlet Bridge. Could you advise why a speed reduction is not being considered along the old section of King Arthur Terrace, as this would immediately improve safety for drivers and cyclists alike? You mentioned accidents along King Arthur Terrace in support of bike lanes. Could you advise the crash statistics for this area of King Arthur Terrace? Could you also please advise why Council is prioritising funding for applications for secondary bikeway corridors rather than principal bikeway corridors? Could you please advise how Council would remove all parking along King Arthur Terrace to support bike lanes? Could you please advise why Council would support bike lanes along King Arthur Terrace when there are no bike connections at the Pamphlet Bridge or to Graceville Avenue, just a 1 metre wide bitumen footpath that forms part of the bridge? I request the additional information. Now, I did get responses, and I'm going to just put those on the record as well. We can't have a speed limit reduction along this part of the road because a speed limit review was done in 2021 and it was recommended it be retained as 60. Well, we've done multiple petitions calling for speed reductions, and we know that slowing cars down, particularly where you are in busy areas like this where there are bikes because it's on the River Loop, and a lot of driveways backing in and out, that a speed reduction would make it safer. We know this, yet Council will not do it. They will not fight for it. One koala dies and off they go out there. We know that the officers bent over backwards within about a week and a half to get the signs out there for their social media posts, to get them ready. But, you know, if people are hurt or there's a problem with local safety, people out my way don't get the same recognition. I asked about accidents. So even though this says that there have been accidents and that's a reason to do these bike lanes, in the past 5 years there have been 2 minor injuries. Now, I'm not sure what they are, it doesn't say, it just says minor injury. I've had people die. So on the corner of Stephen Street and Kadumba Street, we had a cyclist die. Had a cyclist killed on the corner of Hyde Road and Fairfield Road. A cyclist died. I had a cyclist who's become a paraplegic after an accident on the Brisbane Corso near Cansdale Street. These are just in the last few years where cyclists have died in my ward and council has done nothing to improve safety at these intersections. All places where there should be upgrades that are delivered, and there haven't been. But there have been 2 minor injuries along King Arthur Terrace, and that's enough to get council to do something. Something doesn't add up here. Can you advise why council's prioritising funding applications for secondary bikeway corridors? So apparently, unbeknownst to probably most residents, King Arthur Terrace is now going to become a principal bikeway corridor, and I'm sure that the last 1 or 2 voters in Tennyson that might consider voting Liberal will be stopping when I write and tell them what the Lord Mayor's agreed to here, because they don't want their parking removed. Residents in Highgate Hill on Dornoch Terrace didn't want their parking removed. There have to be better ways to do this, and I'm sure there are, but just simply saying in a ban parking, which is one of the options that council's considering, is just, it's not practical or suitable. And then, oh yes, could you please advise why council would support a bike lane on King Arthur Terrace when there are no bike connections at the Pamphlet Bridge or to Graceville Avenue? Just the 1 metre wide bitumen footpath, barely wide enough for one person. And the answer, widening of the existing bridge or footpath will be considered in a future budget to support off-road bike cycling. Well, guess what? This Lord Mayor's cutting projects. He's not listing projects. He's not going to widen a bridge. I mean, the idea that there's going to be these bikeways and then they'll just stop at a narrow bridge doesn't make any sense either. So, classic LNP, the bikeway to nowhere. And look, I didn't say I didn't support this. I said it was not the right solution. So this is where the LNP and council are not listening. I mean, I used to say Graham Quirk had a tin ear, but this Lord Mayor's got a giant tin ear. He's not listening, and he's not allowing council to be flexible enough to find good solutions for local communities. So I support finding bike solutions. I think there are ways we can do it, and particularly off-road so that it's safe for everyone. But simply not considering some practical measures like reducing the speed limit, which could be done at very limited cost, which would be best for everybody, the cyclists, pedestrians and residents, something the residents support. It makes cyclists feel more confident. They know they're not getting someone whizzing by at 65. It just makes it feel a lot safer for them. So I think that the representation in here that I don't support this is probably not quite right. But this isn't the right solution that council is proposing, and there's going to be a lot of unhappy residents here at the end of the day when they find out what the LNP are trying to do in Tennyson.
Councillors, are there any further speakers? See no one rising. Councillor Murphy, right or reply?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just briefly, in respect of Councillor Johnson's debate there, I have a copy of the email that she sent in with the recommendation. I'll read it out to the chamber and they can decide whether this is for or against the recommendation. Quote, "No, I do not support the recommendation. It is not the best recommendation for the issue. Thank you." Now, I don't know, officers, they're not mind readers. They don't look into the depth into someone's mind as to what they might be thinking when they write an email. All they can do is read the email and decide whether someone has supported or not supported the recommendation. So to me, that's pretty clear. She didn't support the recommendation, Councillor Johnson. That's okay. Just own up to it. You don't support cycling infrastructure in your ward. That's okay. Own it. That's fine. Not a problem. In respect of Councillor Cassidy's contribution, Chair, and Councillor Cassidy loves to misquote me in the chamber. The reality is, and what I said is that this organisation, this council, does generally build its budget cycles and how it spends money around 4-year terms, and the commitments that administrations and incoming administrations make at election periods in order to calibrate its budget for those 4-year terms. It's for that reason that often you see the capital profile dip down towards the end of a 4-year term. That's always been the way. It's not party political. It's not, you know, an outrageous interference with the officers. It's actually how the officers, the CEO, the council is configured, and there's nothing strange or unusual about that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. We will now put the report. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Councillors.
Point of order, Chair.
Point of order, Councillor Whitney.
Yeah, I move that the suspension of standing orders to allow me to move a motion.
Seconded.
We have a motion for the suspension of standing orders moved by Councillor Whitney, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Whitney, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. So all throughout today, we have heard about the $1.6 million worth of cuts that we're going to be facing as a city per day. And we're not sure of what that's going to look like. You know, I may not get Preston Road resurfaced. We might get another section of Beams Road not funded. You know, we have absolutely no idea where those cuts are going to be coming from just yet. We do have some projects in our city that cannot afford to be cut. We've got very few, but some projects that are supported on a bipartisan level, not just within this chamber, but on every level of government. At the moment, I have a community survey in which I've had over 300 respondents from my community come to me with what they want Wynnum Manly to look like in 10, 20, 30 years' time. One of the most common responses I'm getting is Lindum, the Lindum level crossing. When is the Lindum level crossing coming? When is that upgrade coming?
Councillor Whitney, can I just interrupt you there for just one moment? It's the 3 minutes as to why this, because it sounds like you're moving into the substantive motion, as to why it wasn't submitted yesterday. Just short, sharp. Thank you.
Yep, I've still got, as other people have been able to do, I've still got a minute 40 left. When is Lindum level crossing coming? When is it? When are we actually going to improve the safety of our residents on multiple wards? That's why I'm moving a motion today that says that this council will commit to not cutting any funding from the Lindum level crossing project.
Thank you, Councillor Whitney. I struggle to find why you didn't...
I said it at the very beginning throughout today.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm not going to enter into a debate with you. You didn't... Councillor Cassidy, stop. Stop. I wasn't allowed to finish. Right? I'm not going to rule this motion out of order, but I would like to see a reason why and establish the reason why within that 3-minute period. You gave one sentence and then moved into the substantive... Wait until I finish. And then moved into the substantive motion. We will now put whether this is worth suspending standing orders for. Are you happy for me to do that?
Just point of order on that though, first, Chair.
Yeah, sure.
I said it within the first sentence.
Yep.
That throughout today, I didn't say throughout the last few weeks, I didn't say in the last 3 months since the budget was handed down, I said throughout today. That establishes why I could not have this as a notified motion.
Correct, but you went straight into the substantive after you gave that sentence. So I'm just pulling people up on it now because it's getting a bit long in the tooth. So we're now going to put the motion. All those in favour of suspending the standing orders, say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. The noes have it.
Division.
Division.
Can we have division, please? Councillor Cassidy and Councillor Whitney, please. Ayes to my right and noes to my left. Councillors, a bit of quiet, please. Councillor Adderman. Councillor Adderman, and a bit of shush, please. Clerks, please read the results. Councillors, in silence, please.
Mr Chair, the noes have it, the voting being 7 in favour and 17 against.
The motion for suspending standing orders has been lost. Councillors, please return to your seats. Councillors, I draw your attention to the notice of motion, item 9 on the agenda. Councillor Cassidy, could you please move your motion?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I move that Brisbane City Council use 100% of the bushland preservation levy to acquire new bushland.
Seconded. It has been moved by Councillor Cassidy and seconded by Councillor Griffiths that Brisbane City Council use 100% of the bushland preservation levy to acquire new bushland. Councillor Cassidy, you got the call.
Thanks very much, Chair. It's a very simple motion. Whether this council agrees today that 100% of the bushland preservation levy is used to acquire new bushland or not. That's what this is about today. We know that every time a rates notice goes out, whether it's in the mail or emailed to people, whether they have a direct debit payment set up or a payment plan, or they go to the post office and pay with cash. Each and every time that happens, residents, ratepayers are paying a levy on their rates for the preservation of bushland. Our view is that proceeds from that levy, which people think are going to purchase bushland, should be going to purchase bushland. It's a really simple concept. The council website says, and this is how the levy is described for people, that residents and businesses contribute to protecting Brisbane's most significant natural assets. This is done through the payment of the bushland preservation levy in their rates account. Brisbane City Council uses the levy for the bushland acquisition program to protect and enhance Brisbane's natural environment. If you read that as a ratepayer, you'd assume that all of that money is going to purchasing more bushland, to protect more bushland. And there's a point to protecting more, and we'll come to that in just a moment. We often hear the LNP councillors get up and say that all of that bushland was purchased by Sally Ann Atkinson. One block was purchased by Lord Mayor Sally Ann Atkinson. The fund was established and one single property was purchased by that Liberal administration, and then thousands of hectares were purchased through the 1990s and 2000s by the Sawley administration, and that has been continued, but to a much smaller extent when it comes to using the bushland preservation levy. What we do know now is that this LNP administration uses these funds that are raised for the purchasing of bushland for other programs which should be funded out of the annual budget of council. Although I'm sure even those are now going to be cut by this LNP administration because they need to find $1.6 million a day in cuts to projects and services in the suburbs of Brisbane. There is an awful lot of creative accounting that goes on in this LNP administration. In the Bushland Preservation Levy report for the period ended March 2023, we can see that less than 20% Less than 20% of that levy is used to acquire bushland under that program. The one thing that council publicly says it should be used for. When you go to the website, the only public statement that this LNP administration makes about using the bushland preservation levy is that it is used to acquire bushland. But we find out in papers that come to the council committee only, that aren't even brought to this council chamber for public consumption, is that less than 20% of that levy is used to purchase new bushland. We did try and find a more recent figure than March 2023, but the next quarterly report, which was for the June quarter ending in June 2023, that figure is not available anymore. That figure disappears. I'm sure it's dropping. I'm sure it's dropping. So the issue here is that this LNP administration is being sneaky, they're being deceitful. When they're saying to people, when they're paying their levy, that that is being used to purchase new bushland. Because we know that 80 cents out of every dollar of that levy is not being used to purchase new bushland. Now, council has a target of 40% of mainland Brisbane to be natural habitat by 2031. We hear that often in here, how close the LNP are getting to that 40% figure. So the mainland of Brisbane, as we know, is, you can get this from the council website too, 1,342.7 square kilometres. Councillor Davis has recently boasted that the LNP administration are currently sitting at 38.9%, and so very close to reaching their target. That additional bushland needs to be 27 square kilometres to get us to that target by 2031. But much of what the LNP say in this space and everywhere is smoke and mirrors. We know that, you know, it was a couple of years ago now that they used over $6 million. It came into close to $7 million, I think, in the end, at purchasing that land at Carrara Street and Nurran Street in Mount Gravatt East. That wasn't bushland. There have certainly been trees planted on it now, but that wasn't bushland at the time. So when that purchase was made, Chair, in 2019, it was reported to be the third most expensive purchase since the levy was introduced in 1990. It was an awful lot more expensive than the 500 hectares of the Boondall wetlands that the Lord Mayor of the day in the 1990s purchased for $1. Preserved 500 hectares for $1, not the house block for $6.2 million at Mount Gravatt East. But so as long as the LNP continue to play politics and continue to be sneaky and unaccountable about how this public money is being used, we've got very little chance of hitting that 40% target and getting beyond it as well, beyond 2031. The acquisition of bushland is key to making sure our city of suburbs is livable and enjoyable for people into the future. People say that their way of life here in Brisbane is unique. They like it. They like the natural environment. I don't think they would like to know, as ratepayers, that 80% of the money they're paying in a levy to preserve new and additional bushland is being used for anything but that. Our goal will be to ensure that our natural environment is protected into the future, instead of just paying lip service to it like the LNP administration in Brisbane does here time and time again. It's a really simple proposition. I'm sure the LNP will get up, they'll probably lay it on the table or amend it or try to amend it or delay it or something like that. They don't really like to be on the record about things that are important to the people of Brisbane. They try and obfuscate as much as they can. But this is a really simple proposition. The things that are being funded today through the bushland acquisition program, like basic maintenance and weeding and fuel costs and administrative costs and photocopying and back office support, that's all being funded out of the levy that people are paying. People don't want to see that. They know that needs to happen, but they want to see their levy actually used to purchase new and additional bushland, to make sure that we get to that 40% level, to make sure we get beyond that 40% level, so that our city is genuinely climate resilient into the future. We're hearing more and more from the LNP administration that we must go up, not out, that we have to increase density where it's well located, and we have to protect our natural environment. Well, why don't they put their money where their mouth is? Why don't the LNP, instead of just paying lip service to protecting bushland, actually do it? Too few properties are coming through council for us to purchase using the bushland preservation levy. To know that we're raising tens of millions of dollars through this levy, but only spending chicken feed on actually purchasing new bushland each and every year, the 1 or 2 that come through each year is not going to add up to that 27 square kilometres of new and additional bushland and habitat cover that we're going to need to reach on mainland Brisbane. So it's a really simple proposition. Do you vote yes or do you vote no? Do you want to see the bushland preservation levy used to purchase new bushland, or do you want to see business as usual under the LNP? You want to use 80 cents in every dollar to do everything other than protect new and additional bushland. Really simple, a really simple motion, and something I hope the LNP will support.
Thank you, Councillor. Further speakers? Deputy Mayor.
Well, this is actually quite enjoyable. So I see that the motion is actually seconded by Councillor Griffiths, and I'm wondering if this is actually his payback for them trying to oust him out of his very safe seat coming up to this election, because Councillor Griffiths is a councillor for Deagon straight into an absolute huge whopping when it comes to the bushland preservation levy.
Point of order.
Point of order, Councillor Johnson.
Now, Mr Chairman, I'm sure you know what I'm going to say.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Johnson.
You've been very clear, you can't use that word.
Councillor Johnson.
Will you enforce your
Councillor
ruling?
Johnson. Deputy Mayor, you do realise that we do not use that word in the chamber anymore, just as a reminder. It's not... It is been noted as an act of disorder, and it's not to be used in the form of a noun or a verb.
Thank you, Mr Chair.
Could you please redact it?
Oh, I absolutely will redact that, because I wasn't talking about the councillors being... I was just talking about the history, and I'm glad that Councillor Cassidy brought up the history, because now I can bring up the history and correct the record. So therefore, if it wasn't about the mistruths that Councillor Griffiths wanted to talk about, I'm going to go back and say after 20 years in this place, the longest serving, possibly the grandfather of the chamber now that a few more have left, has just totally forgotten what happened. Totally forgotten, and has just walked through an open door to get it slammed in their face, because the history of this bushland preservation levy is very, very different to what we just heard from Councillor Cassidy. Very, very different. And ironically and quite funny, I went back and actually pulled my speech from the 09-10 budget. So the thing that we again hear very often from those opposite and those at the other end of George Street is that this is a 20-year administration. It is not. The administration from 2004 to 2008 was the ALP administration, and it was very clear when we came in 08 that the ALP administration did not spend the bushland preservation levy on buying bushland. They didn't even spend the levy on protecting bushland. The money that was being put towards bushland acquisition from 1988 to 2004, the amount collected was $70 million. How much went to actually, when I say purchase or protect and preserve, I mean anything to do with the bushland, preserving it, protecting it, looking after it? 38%. 38%. The other over 60% went to photocopiers, pens, papers, toner, all of that stuff that you need in the administration. That is when we needed to actually look and change the laws about how levies worked and make sure that every dollar that you get goes towards preservation. There is very, very strict guidelines around levies. Just like we have the ambulance levy that we collect for the state government, they need to spend it on the ambulance. and we need to spend it on bushland preservation levy. So ironically, what we are here that they are accusing of doing today is exactly what they did for the time that they were in administration, from 94 to 2004. And what did we do once we stood into administration in 2008? We started investing in land management. We recognised that it took a whole-of-program approach. Habitat Brisbane, creek ranges, conservation reserve management. I'm reading straight from my notes that I spoke about 14 years ago in this place. We worked with the city plan to make sure we had compliance with the Land Protection Act. We improved our trialling methods of eradication and spreading weeds. We got new contracts for our wipeout weeds components. We got on with the business of preserving our land management. And I think Councillor Cassidy is absolutely pulling the other one if he doesn't think the people of Brisbane thinks the bushland preservation levy isn't about preserving land, buying new land and preserving the land. The definition of preservation is the activity or process of keeping something valued alive, intact or free from damage or decay. The actual definition says protect what you've got, keep it alive. On top of that, we have done way more purchasing of bushland in the next 10 years than they did in the 10 years from 2000 to 2004. I've got it here. It was only 870 hectares from the 10 years to 2004. We bought that amount in the first four years of our first term in 2008 to 2012. Then we accelerated 10 years of purchase them to 2012 to 2016. And guess what? We are now preserving it to be the best intact bushland in a major city in this country. So the hypocrisy of those opposite to accuse us of doing exactly what they did for over a decade. And the sadness that Councillor Griffiths has no memory of that because he's been in this place since 2000 is amazing. And there was also a statement of that Councillor Sally Ann Atkinson only bought one property. I'm not quite sure if that was true or not, but I do know they voted against it. Labor voted against it. They voted against the bushland preservation levy. They voted against the purchase of the property. I think it was out in your ward, Councillor Adaman. So for them to stand up here and lecture us on how we maintain this magnificent bushland and keep purchasing well above any level we saw their administration do is the highest amount of hypocrisy ever. On top of that, and for that reason, I move the following amendment. After the word new, add a comma, and then the following words, and preserve existing. And the motion will now read that Brisbane City Council uses 100% of the bushland preservation levy to acquire new and preserve existing bushland.
Seconded.
Point of order.
Just one moment, please. Point of order, Councillor Cassidy.
Oh, thanks very much, Chair. That entirely reverses the meaning of this motion. That reinforces what is currently happening. The original motion was to change that position. If the administration want to continue what's happening now, they just need to vote against the motion instead of amending it. You cannot amend a motion to alter its original meaning to be the complete opposite.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Just give me one moment, please. Deputy Mayor, Would you mind giving me an adjournment for 15 minutes? There's a document I need to refer to.
Yes, Mr Chair, I move that you adjourn for 15 minutes for the Chair's consideration.
Seconded.
We have a motion before us for an adjournment for 15 minutes so that I may consider what Councillor Cassidy has put forward to us. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you for your indulgence, Chamber. Councillor Cassidy, with regards to your point of order, under Meetings Local Law, Section 40, amendment of a motion, said the amendment shall be in terms which retain the identity of the original motion. The motion amendment put forward to us by the Deputy Mayor does do that. It retains the original identity. And in accordance with the ruling from the Office of the Independent Assessor that backs up that Section 40 in Meetings Local Law in dealing with a motion last session, it also reinforces that decision. So I will uphold the amendment as noted. Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, Mr Chair, I just had to move back into the intermediate. Thank you very much. I think it's pretty explanatory. It really is just clarifying, because I think it's a bit cute if Councillor Cassidy thinks that the people of Brisbane don't think that bushland preservation levy also goes towards the preservation of the very large holdings, 38.9% of the LGA area. I think in the speech I had there from 13 years ago, we said 40% by 2026. We should get there. We'll go very close to getting there, but I'm pretty proud that we're getting to 38.9 as we are. But I think it's very clear that the people of Brisbane would understand that preservation means please look after it. I'm sure he's also gotten the requests from his residents about maintaining weeds, etc. on council land, and that is what we do. We preserve it, we look after it, we make sure that it is valued, it's alive, it's intact, and it's free from damage and decay. The definition of preservation, it's what the levy goes to, and we commend this motion to the Chamber.
Councillor Cassidy.
Yeah, thanks very much. I speak on the amendment, and I don't think it's very self-explanatory, as the Deputy Mayor said. I think it's very weak. It's an incredibly weak position for the LNP to use their massive majority in here to not actually genuinely debate a policy position and a decision that we could make as a council, whether we as a council here think that 100% of the levy that residents pay in their rates bill should be used to purchase new and additional bushland. Now, I understand why the Deputy Mayor might be a little confused about this whole thing. She referred to an old speech she made, and in the Deputy Mayor's comments just now said that that levy that people pay in their rates is used to maintain the 38.9%. That's also not correct. Because the 38.9% and the 40% we need to get to is all habitat cover in Brisbane. That doesn't just mean areas of bushland that were preserved and need maintaining as well. So the Deputy Mayor doesn't seem to know much about this at all. But what this amendment does is reinforce the status quo of what the LNP are doing now.
Yes, which is a shame.
Yeah, it's less than 20%. Less than 20% of that levy that is raised is used to purchase new bushland. And that's the reality. The Deputy Mayor gets up and says that Labor did something in the 1990s, therefore that's their justification. We're in 2023.
Point of order, Mr Chair.
Just one moment, Councillor Cassidy. Point of order, Deputy Mayor.
Claim to be misrepresented.
Noted. Thank you.
We're in 2023, last time I checked. And last time I checked, the LNP were in administration, unfortunately. And last time I checked, the LNP administration, and they had control of the council budget and the decision-making of council since Campbell Newman was elected in 2004, 20 years ago. And they've done this all day, and they've done this all year, and they've done this all term in blaming somebody else for their problems. Continue to do it today about their $400 million in cuts they have to make.
Point of order,
Always
Mr
putting
Chair.
it off to someone else.
Councillor Cassidy, point of order, Deputy Mayor.
Claim to be misrepresented.
Noted. Councillor Cassidy, you got the call.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. So the LNP had a choice. Did they support 100% of the levy being used to purchase new and additional bushland, or did they not? Well, this amendment confirms the status quo, and that's what this Conservative LNP administration is all about. We remember, of course, this administration is headed by a Conservative LNP mayor. We remember the Courier Mail did their little list of powerful people in Brisbane, and they confirmed that Adrian Schrinner was a very Conservative politician. So we know that they like the status quo. They're very Conservative, they're not very progressive, they're not open to change. And they don't want to change things in Brisbane, they want to keep them as they are at the moment. And people are concerned about the future of Brisbane. They want to protect their way of life. They want to make sure we're a climate resilient city, and they want to see more habitat cover and more bushland bought and preserved. But what the LNP want is the status quo. They want to use the money they're levying from ratepayers not to purchase new bushland, but to just maintain what they've already got. We don't think that's good enough, and that's why we've moved this motion today. But it has confirmed this amendment, and I'm sure the LNP will vote in favour of that, then their new motion. This confirms what we thought, that the LNP don't want to use the bushland preservation levy to purchase new bushland. And they certainly can't, as we have discovered today. It's really clear. They cannot fund the maintenance of natural areas through the budget anymore. They haven't been able to do it to date, and now that they're going to find $1.6 million a day in cuts to services and projects and programs in every suburb of Brisbane, the maintenance budget for our natural areas will decrease further from the capital budget, and even more of the bushland preservation levy will have to be used for the maintenance of existing bushland. So we will never, under the LNP, we will never get to 40% natural habitat cover. And this confirms it today. And this will be another reason for people to vote them out in March next year.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor, your 2 points of misrepresentation, please.
First of all, Councillor Cassidy said that I was using the debate that what they did was right, so we had to do it the same way. I didn't say that. He's the one that started with Sally Ann. And next one that claimed that we were blaming others. We are not blaming others. We are making no apologies for maintaining the bushland that we own and preserve.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Further speakers? Councillor Johnson.
Yes, I rise to speak on the amendment, and I just want to thank Councillor Cassidy and Councillor Griffiths for bringing this motion forward, because we know that the LNP have inappropriately used the bushland buyback levy over many years for improper purposes, I think is probably the best way to put it, improper purposes. It's only as recently as 2020...
Point of order, Mr Chair.
Point of order, Deputy Mayor.
She claims to know the definition of imputing motive. That was imputing motive.
Councillor Johnson. Councillors, please. Councillor Johnson, please consider your language.
Well,
Councillor Griffiths, just one.
I know they don't want to talk about this, and this is fundamentally the problem, and this is why the motion's been brought. And the motion's a simple one: use 100% of the bushland preservation levy to acquire new bushland. Now, we know that this fund has been the plaything of the LNP since they got in full control of it in 2008. We know as a fact that 95% of the funds in this levy are being spent in LNP areas. You've got huge tracts of bushland in my ward, but we can't get any buyback to connect up critical pathways over there. But more damningly, the Queensland Audit Office exposed the improper use of the fund in 2020. And that was in response to the absolutely outrageous, politically intended use of that fund to buy 3 residential blocks with some palm trees and a 70s brick house on it to save Councillor Adams.
Yes.
To save Councillor Adams.
Yes.
There was no bushland, they were residential blocks. And this matter was referred off for investigation, and adverse findings were made against the LNP for improper use of the bushland buyback fund.
Point of order, Mr Chair.
Point of order,
That is
Deputy Mayor.
absolutely incorrect and imputing motive, and I ask her to table where it says that about the Bushland Preservation Act or withdraw that comment.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Johnson, can you provide any evidence with regard to the statement that you've just made?
Yeah, I just Googled it, but you know, it's not that hard. Anybody can look it up, it's on the public record. But because the Deputy Mayor seems...
Point of order, Mr Chair. I'm sorry. The QAO made a report. It did not say what Councillor Johnson just alleged. Did not say what Councillor Johnson just alleged, and I ask her to table it or withdraw it.
Thank you.
Happy to take it on notice, but she tables it or withdraws it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Johnson, would you care to table the documents with regard to your accusations?
Was that a point of order?
It was a point. Well, actually, just one moment. No, you are making accusations against another councillor in this place. You were imputing motive. Then I'm happy for Councillor Johnson to table the report. Otherwise, please withdraw. Okay, then we will take it that you are going to table the document that you're referring to.
May I continue?
Only on whether...
What am I doing that's wrong against the meeting's local law? Do you think you could be clear on that?
We'll put it this way. If somebody had made those accusations against you, you would be making the same claim. So just one moment, Councillor Griffiths. Sit back down, please. I'll get back to you in a minute. No, what you need to stop... No, I would like to see, if you're making accusations against a specific councillor in this place, then withdraw your statement.
Withdraw what statement? That the QAO made a report saying council's done the wrong thing? They did, and if I can continue my speech, I'll put it on the public record.
That councillor, the Deputy Mayor had nothing to do with this.
I haven't said anything about it.
Okay, fine. Councillor Griffiths, were you rising on a point of order?
I was just going to... My point of order...
Yeah, just one moment, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Griffiths speaking.
Was that Councillor Johnson didn't mention any councillor's name.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Point of order, Mr Chair.
Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Johnson clearly said in this place that the QAO found an adverse reflection on the council on the Bushland Preservation Levy because of purchases in my ward. That is slander. There is no privilege in this place. She produces the document where it says that, or she withdraws the comment. It's very simple.
Councillor Johnson, I would strongly encourage you to withdraw your comment on the basis that you've made accusations against another councillor in this place.
Point of order, Mr Chairman.
Point of order,
Firstly, your repeated statements that I've made some sort of allegations about a councillor in this place are false. They are untrue, and you should withdraw them now. I have not made any allegation against any individual councillor in this place, and your continued statements that I have are not true.
In that case, you are aware that there is no privilege in this place. Can you turn your mic on and please acknowledge that there is no privilege in this place? Are there any further speakers?
She hasn't finished.
Oh my God.
I would like to know, and for Councillor Johnson...
This is not appropriate. This is not appropriate, Mr Chairman. I've done nothing wrong. I haven't heard you make a ruling.
Councillor Johnson...
I haven't done the things you've said. I'm trying to speak about something that is on the public record.
I acknowledge that, but I would encourage you...
You are simply acting at the Deputy Mayor's direction here, and it's not appropriate.
Councillor Johnson, I would encourage you to acknowledge that there is no privilege in this place, and then please move on.
I would like to continue my speech.
I'm happy for you to continue on the assumption that you know that there's no privilege in this place. Please continue.
Oh my God. This is how badly the LNP do not want their financial mismanagement in this place to be on the public record. Now, the Queensland Audit Office conducted a review of this council's operations, and they made findings that this council was not spending money in the best way that it should. Now, let me be clear, improper is my word, because the Audit Office has said the following, and this is their report that's on the public record. It said, the way the scheme operated meant there were risks that land was not identified in the schedule of bushland to be acquired that could be bought. There is a risk that the assessments of relative properties for bushland acquisitions may not be applied consistently, particularly where properties are identified for acquisition that were not included in the bushland acquisition schedule. Expenses including overheads may not be allocated appropriately and consistently to the program. It is appalling that the Queensland Audit Office had to make these findings about how the LNP administration administered the funds. We know that they did not do ecological studies to support the acquisition of bushland. We know that. We know from the file requests, we know from Councillor Griffiths pursuing this matter, and we know from the Queensland Audit Office report that it was critical of how this administration used the bushland buyback fund.
Councillor Johnson.
Not me.
Councillor Johnson, what you're failing to acknowledge is that they're acknowledging that there is a risk, not that they did it. They only found a risk.
Would you like to come down and debate too, Mr Chairman?
No,
you should hop out of your chair and come down on the floor and join in the debate if you don't like what I've said.
I'm just letting you know that you previously stood on acknowledgement that there was no privilege in this place.
And it is my view that the LNP's buying 3 blocks of land in Mount Gravatt East and telling us it was all supported was improper. Let me be clear, that is my view. It is improper. And I know everybody else wants to debate.
I ask for your ruling on this being imputing motive. I think this is well outside what the Audit Office actually shared, and Councillor Johnson even shared that it was a risk. It wasn't a finding, and I think it is not fair for this argument to continue in such a way.
Councillor Hutton, given that Councillor Johnson has read what the Audit Office report did say, where it acknowledged there was a risk and not that council did in that particular case, and some of the wording and the language that Councillor Johnson has been using, I would consider that imputing motive, and I would ask Councillor Johnson to withdraw her statements on the basis that you are imputing not only this council but council officers acquiring land inappropriately.
No, it was inappropriate, Mr Chairman. That is my opinion. We are in a political chamber, and if I cannot express my opinion, that's just straight out censorship.
No,
I haven't imputed motive on anybody. I've stated my personal opinion.
Point of order, Mr Chair.
Point of order.
Mr Chair, I move that we take a short break so that everybody can calm down and that people can resume this discussion after we've had a 5-minute break.
Seconded.
We have had a motion to adjourn the meeting for a period of 5 minutes. All moved by Councillor Howard, seconded by Councillor Hutton. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. The ayes have it.
Division.
Seconded.
Division called by Councillor Johnson and seconded by Councillor Griffiths. Ayes to my right and noes to my left. think Councillor Cassidy's missing. Clerks, please read the result.
Mr Chair, the ayes have it, the voting being 12 in favour and 6 against.
Councillors, we will take a short adjournment. Thank you. Councillor Johnson, you've got the call. You've got 3 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Look, all of that noise is just trying to hide the